I'd like to call the business meeting of the Portland Board of Public Education to order. It is April 5th, 2022, and we're meeting in a blended format with some of us in person at Casco Bay High School and others joining us via Zoom. Mr. Superintendent, will you please call the roll?
Yes, Madam. Yes, Madam Chair. Ms. Bondo.
Présent.
Mr. Burke.
Here.
Ms. Russell Better.
Here.
Ms. Biliou.
Here.
Mr. Youssef.
Here.
Ms. Ellis.
Here.
Mr. McLaughlin.
Here.
Mr. Alzamili. Ms. Santiago. Ms. Diu.
Here.
And Chair Figdor.
Here. All right, I would like to invite everyone to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Excellent. I wanted to again welcome Ms. Ellis, who is the acting representative for Casco Bay High School. We're really happy to have you in this capacity, so look forward to your working with us.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
We're going to start today's meeting with public comment. So this is public comment on issues that we're not voting on tonight. So in particular, what that means is it's not public comment on the budget or on the buildings for our future funding. There will be time when we get to those agenda items for public comment on both of those issues. So just again, there's public comment later in the meeting on the budget. So if any member of the public would like to address the board, you'll have 3 minutes. You can use the raise your hand feature in Zoom to indicate that you'd like to speak to the board, and you'll have three minutes to address the board. Please begin with your name and address. And I'm just going to note that Ms. Santiago, our school board representative for Deering, is on as a panel. Thank you for moving her over to a panelist. Okay. All set. So I see that we have George Rowe, who would like to speak to the board. So George, just give me one moment as I set up my timer. Okay. You may go ahead, George.
Thank you. Assume I can be heard here. I just wanted to thank the superintendent. I had reached out to the board at your last meeting, I think it was your last meeting, and just asked that you do some sprucing up of your headquarters property and the parking lot on Portland Street that's attached to your headquarters property, formerly known as the Bayside Learning Center complex. The superintendent reached out to me almost immediately after your meeting, the next business day, and made some time in his schedule to do an inspection with me. And he has already made some progress. And again, no one's expecting miracles to be made based on the condition of the property and for various other considerations. But I really appreciate the effort that's being made. And as part of that discussion, the superintendent made me aware that there's a United Way volunteer day that is going to be partnering with a school district to do some further beautification. And I hope the whole board is made aware of those details as well. And to the extent you have time to participate, to perhaps participate as well. I hopefully will also be able to do that as well. It's a team effort. You guys talk a lot about collaboration and teamwork, and this really means a lot to the neighborhood that you are a part of. And I just wanted to make a quick note in the time that I have left. the whole neighborhood of Bayside was basically a creation of kind of an urban renewal rebranding. And for most of the early history of Portland until after World War II, Bayside was just considered central Portland. It was just part of the downtown district. And the setting off of Bayside was done basically as a way to kind of really just destroy the neighborhood and pretend that you weren't destroying Portland at the same time. But there's a real history of the Portland schools in this neighborhood. The Walker School was the first vocational education program for the entire city. There used to be a school on Casco Street, a little further up the hill from the Walker Technical Manual School, called the Casco Street School, and that was demolished. There was a school on Forest Avenue.
George, would you like another minute or so?
Yeah, sure. Let me just, I'll
Okay.
try and wrap up in about 30 seconds. Thank you.
Please go ahead.
The Jackson School was demolished. It's across the street from the Portland Stage Theater on Forest Avenue. It's now a parking lot. And of course, Portland High School, which consisted of various buildings over the years and is now one big complex, is of course considered by many to be the heart of Portland's school system. And absolutely its historic heart. And so you guys have always been part of the neighborhood. You've always enriched it. And now, because of this transaction in 2013, the headquarters is back in Bayside. And I think, again, a lot of employees didn't really like that because of obviously there's a lot going on in Bayside now that wasn't going on, years ago. But I just want to make it clear that you guys are part of this neighborhood. You're part of its history. You're part of its fabric. And it should not in any way, shape, or form be a burden to be good neighbors. And I really, again, just wanted to thank the superintendent for hearing me out and hearing my message and embracing that role. And again, I hope the rest of you can participate in doing whatever small part you can to make the school district a shiny penny in the neighborhood, which isn't easy, but I appreciate it. Any effort that goes down that road. Thank you.
Thank you so much, George. And thank you for your history of Portland Public Schools in the Bayside community. Are there other members of the public who would like to address the board? If so, please use the raise your hand feature in Zoom. Okay, I don't see any other hands, so I'm going to close public comment and move to the report of the chair. To all of our Muslim students, staff, families, and school board members, Ramadan Mubarak. I ask that our staff extend grace to our students who are fasting from dawn to dusk and praying into the night and in the early morning in observance of Ramadan. I want to invite all of the 12 candidates who have now qualified for the June special election to fill our 3 open school board seats to introduce themselves to the board and to attend as many of our meetings as possible so you have more firsthand knowledge of our work. I appreciate each of your willingness to serve our community and wish you the best. Tomorrow, Wednesday, April 6th, the Charter Commission will consider a proposal from Commissioner Marcus Houston that would end the City Council's review of school budgets. Last week, I talked about the 3-step process that we go through now to have our budgets approved versus the 1-step process for the city. So 3 steps meaning that we approve the budget, then the city council approves it, and then the voters approve it, whereas the city council approves their own budget and doesn't have additional accountability. I also spoke to the fact that elected officials with no other authority over public education right now are making the most consequential decision about our schools, since the city council is the one that ultimately has the power to decide our total budget. Today, I want to touch on one other aspect of why I strongly support Commissioner Houston's proposal, and I know the whole board has has supported the concept behind it, and that's because of the time constraint that the current schedule puts us in. It was just 3 weeks ago today that the superintendent unveiled his budget. This is a $130 million budget, and yet we have to consider the entirety of the proposal, make our amendments through the finance process, bring it to a first read, and then to the full board with adequate opportunity for the public to comment in a 3-week period. And this schedule is as it is because we asked the city council to change one of their meetings so we would have this amount of time. So it really compresses the time in which we're able to consider the budget. I deeply appreciate the school board's intense work on the budget, but I can say there are consequences. For instance, I know that there are about a dozen emails from members of the community about the budget in my inbox that I haven't had time to respond to. I have read them, but I haven't had time to respond. I want to apologize for that. That's not the way I like to work, because I respond to the emails that I receive as we should as public officials. So just to raise this as a further reason for why Commissioner Houston's proposal makes so much sense, in that it gives the school board, the body with the responsibility to and authority to oversee public education in the city. It would give us more time to consider the budget, to pass a thoughtful budget, and this indeed is a thoughtful budget. But we've just had to do the work in such a compressed timeline. And so with that, I want to encourage my colleagues on the board, as well as staff and family members, to attend the public hearing tomorrow. It's a public hearing followed by a vote on Commissioner Houston's proposal. It's tentatively scheduled for about 9:30 p.m. And I'm hopeful that together we can pass Commissioner Houston's proposal and put public education in Portland on a fundamentally stronger footing for the future. So with that, we are going to move to the report of the students. And today we have Danny McLaughlin of Paz. Danny, the floor is yours.
On March 18th, Paz students from Auto Tech, Cybersecurity, and Culinary Arts programs participated in the Maine Skills USA Championship Conference. The Skills USA is a career and technical student organization serving more than 395,000 CTE high school students. The Skills USA Maine Championship is the state-level competition for CTE students. Paz students participated in career competition events that showcase their technical and employable skills they have built while attending Paz. Contestants begin locally and continue through the state and national levels. As tradition, Paz students performed very well. Paz had 3 gold finishers: Vincent Lepardo in Automotive MLR, Cody Benson in Automotive Service Technology, and Cameron Landry in Cybersecurity. Also 1 silver finish and 2 bronze finishes. March is a big recruiting month for Paz and has been a busy one. We have completed 412 student visits so far, and we anticipate many more as we approach the end of the school year. The Paz Sugar Shack opened on March 27th. This is a culmination of several years of dedication and hard work by students in the Landscaping and Gardens program, Carpentry, Masonry, and Marine Systems program, and the incredible leadership of Kath Traparo and the Landscapes and Garden instructor. Students in the Landscape and Gardens program will use the Sugar Shack for Paz harvest celebrations in the fall and retail sales, including its spring plant sale. As with other products produced in the Landscaping and Garden program, the syrup produced will also be used in the Culinary Arts program. Paz will be offering educational opportunities to PPS school students. Starting in April, programs will be given their third-party certification exams. These exams are a culmination of a lot of practice and hard work by students at Paz. Thank you.
Such exciting news. Thank you so much, Danny. Next, we're going to move to the report of the superintendent, Superintendent Patano.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Nice job, Danny. And it's always awesome to hear about all the great things that are happening at Paths. And I got to come out for the Maple Maple Sunday a couple of weeks ago. And that was just like amazing. So you guys are doing tremendous work. Condolences to the family of former Portland Public Schools special education teacher Judy Swanson, who recently passed away. Ms. Swanson was a PPS employee for 33 years. Judy kept in touch with many of her students and former colleagues in the PPS community, and she will be sorely missed. Ramadan Mubarak to board members, students, and staff celebrating the Islamic holy month. I also want to extend my best wishes to our Jewish and Christian community members as they celebrate the upcoming Passover and Good Friday holidays on April 15th. As is our practice, we have reminded staff to be sensitive to the needs of students and families during these high holidays and minimize the significant activities scheduled for those days. As you heard earlier, the Charter Commission is meeting tomorrow and will consider the Education Committee's proposals, including the revised section on the school budget. With the passage of LD 153, an act to strengthen testing for lead in school drinking water, the Maine legislature has mandated that all schools in Maine test their drinking water for the presence of lead by May 31st of 2022. The Portland Public Schools is in the process of testing all of its facilities, and you may have seen on our website a page that's dedicated to helping people learn about the lab results for each school where testing has been completed already and learn about the remediation steps that the district is taking to address those elevated results. We will have a report on lead testing in our schools at next week's board meeting. The district will administer our annual student climate survey. Some of them are being administered this week. The survey provides us with information about how students are feeling about their PPS experience. The data serves as our ultimate metric around our whole student goal. And this year, we're going a little bit further at the middle school level with an extended survey. As part of our work with the Barr Foundation and the New Teachers Project, TNTP, we're also asking middle school and high school students about their experience with diverse staffing in our schools. Because of the length and possible sensitivity of some of the questions being asked, we're making every effort to make sure that families are aware of the content of the survey and they opt out if they prefer to do so. Each school has distributed the student survey opt-out communications to families, so please be on the lookout for that communication if you haven't received it yet. The letter has been translated into all of our major languages. This coming weekend, we will be hosting a summer camp fair to make families aware of the variety of options available to them as part of our summer school offerings in cooperation with camp providers from across the state and region. We expect to have over 500 weekly spots throughout the summer to keep students engaged and learning. And we will be providing an update on our summer school program offerings also at next week's board meeting. I'm happy to report that we received confirmation from the U.S. State Department that we had successfully applied for the Chinese language teachers under the Teachers of Critical Language programs. This funding will provide support for 2 Chinese teaching positions, one here at Casco Bay and the other one at Deering High School next year. Many of you may recall that it was part of our priority ask from the World Language Department, and we were waiting for confirmation on that. So we're pleased to confirm that we do have the funding for that. And I want to thank Carlos Gomez and Anne-Marie Orth in particular for their work in shepherding that through, as well as the principals of both of our schools. Our Multilingual Multicultural Center recently opened a new food pantry at Central Office where students and parents struggling with food insecurity can stock up on groceries. The Locker Project and Wayside Food Programs, along with MLMC staff member Nyla Wisa and Priscilla Bittencourt, who's our McKinney-Vento liaison and multicultural social worker, are leading this important project to keep the pantry stocked with healthy, culturally sensitive foods. As the majority of homeless PPS students are from multilingual families, we are excited to offer access to nutritious foods at a convenient location. And the MLMC does intake for new PPS students and provides a wide range of support services for children and families, now including access to food. Staying with that theme, I'm happy to report that we successfully launched a series of culturally significant food taste tests at our 3 high schools recently. The taste tests were run in conjunction with our partners in the Food Fuels Learning Initiative, and they're designed to pilot new foods before they're introduced in our menu. Look to see some of these food test products in next year's menus. I would like to recognize our partners and especially Food Service Director Jane McLucas for continuing to find ways to make our district food programs more accessible to our students. Before transitioning to the school opening update, I would like to take a moment to recognize that yesterday was School Librarian Day. Our librarians do amazing work to create welcoming learning centers with diverse resources and are fierce guardians of access to appropriate literature that challenges our students to think, question, and grow. Our budget this year takes a big step toward recognizing their value by increasing the total number of librarians in our schools. Thank you to our great librarians for all that they do year-round on this special day when we recognize them. Also, this week is Assistant Principal Week. Our assistant principals are in many ways the culture leaders of our schools. They, more than anyone, are tasked with the responsibility of ensuring that all of our students have someone that knows them well and understands their needs. They do this while holding the responsibility for sorting through the seemingly never-ending misunderstandings, hurt, and unexpected behavior that happen in any school on any given day. On those days when I don't come close to hitting 10,000 steps, I know with certainty that our APs hit that number by lunchtime. So thank you to all of our amazing assistant principals for their hard work and dedication. Next, I would like to begin our regular update on how we're working to keep schools open, safe, and our staff and students healthy. As we've been doing for the past year and a half now, whenever that happens, I lose my screen. So as we have been doing for the past year and a half, we provide a comprehensive update on our school reopening plans and status at board meetings. We're now a month into our mask optional approach. While we saw a slight increase in our numbers shortly after moving in that direction, that has stabilized over the past couple of weeks. The whole state of Maine continues to be classified as green on the federal map. Hospital and case rates are stable, although they're not declining anymore. And in fact, they seem to be ticking upwards. Local wastewater trends remain good for East End and Westbrook in their community sampling, but wastewater detection has risen in other parts of the state like Lewiston. It is important to remember that we have other mitigation measures that continue, even though masks are optional. Our pool testing program continues and will serve as one of the strongest data points that we have to monitor on an ongoing basis, along, of course, with the color designation of Cumberland County on the US CDC dashboard that I just referred to earlier. And that will help to determine when we might need to increase our mitigation strategies, including whether we would need to return to masking in some settings. We recently made pool testing voluntary for high school athletes. We used the additional bandwidth that this opened up to provide and make pool testing available to all of our high school staff that want to participate in that. I do need to stress the importance of continuing to monitor ourselves for symptoms of COVID. Because symptomatic individuals will possibly be unmasked, it is all the more critical that you stay home if you have any COVID symptoms. Please inform our school nurses if you suspect you may have come down with COVID, and they will help you to confirm that and understand the timing and options available for testing and quarantine. As you know, in partnership with Greater Portland Health, we're offering boosters in all 3 school clinics to any eligible student, and we are continuing the weekly COVID vaccination clinic at King Middle School. Next, I would like to review our key data points. As I've said before, we do not have a specific threshold at which point we would return to masking, but we will be monitoring our own in-school cases along with county and city level indicators to make those decisions. As I noted earlier, at this time, all of our indicators are stable, trending in the right direction, as noted. So onto our customary slides. I will begin by updating you on student and staff attendance. As you can see, our attendance has leveled off. This is the December data, and this is our current data. So it seems like we've reached steady attendance levels. We're not seeing big spikes. We're not seeing anything other than, what look to be fairly flat lines. Next slide. Our staff attendance has also leveled off. And those sharp peaks that you see are usually associated with Fridays, so days before the weekend. We have been, next slide, reporting by grade our data. Given the low number of overall cases, there isn't much to report there. As you can see in this past week, there wasn't any particular grade where we had more than a single case. And finally, here's our comparison to the county. Again, there's not much to report here. Those are, remarkably flat lines on both fronts. So on, the top is the school district, the bottom is the county, and you can see that those lines are pretty steady and have been for a bit now. Moving on, we only had 11 student cases last week and a total of 5 positive pools. There were no classes where there were positives for 2 consecutive weeks, a minimum of 5 positive cases in the class over that period, and a second week in which the number of positive cases trended higher. So I think it's worth noting that on March 25th, we went over 2,000 cases for the year. That means that a full quarter of our humans, staff and students, contracted COVID at some point this past year. That's overwhelming, of course. But what I want to highlight is that in spite of it, we've successfully kept schools open this entire year to date with very few exceptions. This is a tribute to our collective resilience, perseverance, and patience. It's a reminder of the importance and value of our schools to our community and our recognition together that even in the toughest times, we must persist, endure, and remain true to our charge to educate, prepare, and empower the next generation of Portlanders. And this milestone number is a living testimony to what I've been saying throughout the pandemic. It takes all of us working together to keep schools safe for students and staff by listening to our medical advisors and public health officials. I'm incredibly grateful to all of the folks, including you as members of the school board, for your continued adherence to these principles. We will continue to do so moving forward as we look to end this school year true to our commitments. And that concludes my report.
Thank you so much, Mr. Superintendent. Are there questions from the board? Ms. Bondo.
Thank you, Superintendent, for the presentation and for the report. So I have a few questions here for clarification. And if I don't remember right, so we used to do some of the family checks, the symptom checks with families. Are we still doing it?
Yes, ma'am. We still, on a weekly basis, send reminders. And I just mentioned in my remarks that it's all the more important in this time where we aren't wearing masks consistently for anybody that has any symptoms to sort of administer those self assessments, and then if they have any symptoms, to not come to school.
Okay, thank you. And just want to try to understand. So when you mentioned about the option for the pool testing for the high school, so it's just on the spot. It's not for all the students. It's just
right. So we've never been able to provide pool testing at scale for all students at the high school. If you recall, we still have a number of nursing assistant positions that have been posted and we've not been able to fill. And that was to give us the broader capacity to be able to provide testing to everyone. As we've moved into mask optional, we sat down with our team and reviewed what made the most sense. And we determined that, given that masks were optional, that we would make the testing for athletes optional as well.
Okay.
And so by doing that, we reduced the number of students who are actually opting to take the test. And so just to understand, the reason that we thought it didn't make sense to treat them any differently than we treat, other students is we're not able to test all of our students.
Right.
So it didn't make sense for us to just test athletes anymore. So what we did is with that freed up bandwidth for our nurses, we were able to make testing available to anyone on staff that was interested in being a part of a pool.
But we are still open to the capacity in case we need to, in case we have a situation that we have to come back to have those pool testing to build those capacity around the staff need.
Yeah, I mean, the challenge is that we've had those positions posted for, the better part of 3 months now and have not been able to find people to come in to give us the added capacity. We've not reduced our capacity.
Okay.
What we've done is we've redirected it to staff testing as opposed to requiring every athlete to be tested. That was no longer, it was no longer required by the state where it had been at one point.
Okay, good. So just want to get some updates on so how are we doing with the no vaccinated staff? Are we still requiring for the COVID tests weekly or?
Yes.
So with the backlog of the result, are we getting those results? As soon are we getting those results from staff because they have to be at the workplace. So if we don't get any result on time, so what's the process?
So it's the same as it is for all of our other pools. We get them, 24 to 48 hours after the tests are administered.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Bondo. Are there other questions? Ms. Dia?
I was just wondering what the wastewater detection was that you mentioned and what. Can you tell me about
It's one of the metrics that the CDC uses. It basically is testing of water from the sewers. As far as I know, it's not something that I know that much about. I know that our medical officer monitors that data and on a weekly basis reports to Assistant Superintendent Townsend and myself and lets us know what the status is. Is there anything that she's concerned about?
Okay, great. Thank you.
Any other questions from the board?
I have a question. I don't know, it's not necessarily about the report, but I'm wondering with COVID and the fountains being shut off, how are people getting access to drinking water?
So the drinking fountains are shut off, but our bubblers where people can fill their bottles are not.
Oh.
And we are ready to reopen them, but because we were doing the lead testing and some of those test results are coming back, we've waited until we get all of those test results back before we go and reopen the drinking fountains. But throughout the pandemic, that's been in place. And, we have, the bubblers and students are encouraged to bring water bottles and so on instead of, congregating at the water fountains.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ms. Bilio. Seeing no further questions, I just want to note that I have seen that some of our some other districts in Maine are starting to drop pool testing. So I appreciate that we're staying the course for now, especially with the variant and understanding that we're not out of the woods yet. And so I appreciate that we continue to be very closely watch the trends and respond accordingly. So thank you, Mr. Superintendent. And Now we are going to move to the report of the secretary. We have two sets of minutes tonight, minutes from March 15th and from March 29th. We're going to start with the minutes from March 15th. So this is action, consideration and action to approve the meeting minutes of March 15th, 2022. Is there a motion? Ms. Bondo, seconded by Ms. Fresselbetter. Are there any questions on the motion? All right, seeing none, let's move to public comment. So this is public comment specifically on our minutes from the March 15th meeting. Is there any public comment on our minutes? And if there is, please use the raise your hand feature in Zoom to indicate that you'd like to address the board. Seeing none, I'm going to close public comment and move to board discussion. Is there any board discussion on the March 15th minutes? Seeing none, by roll call vote, please indicate whether you support action to approve the meeting minutes of March 15th, 2022. Mr. Superintendent, will you please call the roll?
Yes, Madam Chair. Ms. Bondo,
Yes.
Mr. Burke,
Yes.
Ms. Russell-Better,
Yes.
Ms. Biliou,
Yes.
Mr. Youssef,
Yes.
Ms. Ellis,
Yes.
Mr. McLaughlin,
Yes.
Mr. Alzamili, sorry, Ms. Santiago,
Yes.
Ms. Diu,
Yes.
and Chair Fictor.
Yes, so the minutes pass unanimously with the students voting with the majority. Consideration and action to approve the meeting minutes of March 29th, 2022. Is there a motion? Ms. Russell-Better, seconded by Ms. Bondo. Are there any questions on the motion? Seeing none, we're going to move to public comment. Is there any public comment on our meeting minutes from our March 29th, 2022 meeting? This was our meeting where a special meeting on the budget. Seeing none, I'm going to close public comment and move to board discussion. Is there any board discussion on the meeting minutes? Seeing none, by roll call vote, please indicate whether you support action to approve the meeting minutes of March 29th, 2022. Mr. Superintendent, will you please call the roll?
Yes, Madam Chair. Ms. Bondo,
Yes.
Mr. Burke,
Yes.
Ms. Russell-Better,
Yes.
Ms. Biliou,
Yes.
Mr. Youssef,
Yes.
Ms. Ellis,
Yes.
Mr. McLaughlin,
Yes.
Ms. Santiago,
Yes.
Ms. Diu,
Yes.
and Chair Fictor.
Yes, so the minutes from March 29th pass unanimously with the students voting with the majority. Next, we're on to consent items. Mr. Superintendent, will you please speak to this item?
Yes, Madam Chair. Under Board Policy KCD, the school board accepts by unanimous consent contributions made to the school district. As required by that policy, all of the donations are listed in the board agenda under this item. Our practice is for each donor to receive a written contribution acknowledgement expressing our heartfelt gratitude as well as for their tax purposes. I would like to thank the generous contributors to the Portland Public Schools who have made donations of durable goods, goods of substantial value, and historical or commemorative significance. And this week we have one. Lyman Moore Middle School received Siemens Energy audit kits to supplement the science curriculum as a gift from Carrie Worms. So thank you, Ms. Worms, for your generosity and support of Lyman Middle School.
Thank you, Mr. Superintendent. Okay, now we're on to old business. And tonight we are starting with consideration and action to approve the District Advisory Building Committee recommendation to reallocate project revenues to cost overruns for Presumpscot and Longfellow school renovations. Is there a motion? Ms. Russell-Better? Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Youssef. And Mr. Superintendent, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, Madam Chair. In November of 2017, Portland voters approved the issuing of a $64.2 million bond to renovate Longfellow, Lyseth, Presumpscot, and Reiki Elementary Schools as part of the buildings for our future project. Since that time, staff have been working to advance the 4 renovations. To date, work has been completed on the Lyseth renovations, which were started in 2019, and last spring, the board approved going to bid for the 3 remaining schools. Over the spring and summer of 2021, contracts were approved for the successful bidders for Longfellow, that was Blaine Casey Construction, Presumpscot Great Falls Construction, and Reiki Hardy Pond Construction. This summer and fall, the 3 projects encountered significant permitting delays. As a result of those delays, projects fell off of their schedules. Some of the delays also resulted in new work being required in order to satisfy the city permitting requirements. The delays and required new work resulted in claims being filed by all 3 of the contractors. Since November, when the final substantive permit approval was received, staff and the board's approved architects, Harriman, and owner's representative, CHA, have been reviewing and negotiating those delays and new cost claims. In March, Harriman and CHA presented as final delay and new cost claims totaling $793,992. So that's $504,221 for Longfellow and $289,771 for Presumpscot. And those claims had been reviewed and approved by CHA and Harriman. They presented proposed funding sources for settling those claims as follows. $581,049 are coming from the remaining from the bid allocation for the 3 schools, and $212,943 are coming from the remainder of the Lyseth project contingency and savings from the building costs. And just to note, that leaves $187,057 in that fund, still left over from the Lyseth construction. This recommendation was approved by the District Advisory Building Committee, the DABC, and forwarded to the Board of Education on March 22nd. The board held a first read on March 15th. At the time, obviously, we had not gone through the actual review process with the DABC, but we noted that in the first read. And tonight, we are asking you to approve the DABC's recommendation. This sequence of approvals, so DABC to school board, is consistent with the governance structure that was established by the board for the buildings for our future projects back in 2018. Since March 22nd, Harriman and CHA have informed me that the Presumpscot claim is not final. The contractor, subsequent to our meeting with the DABC, filed additional claims in the amount of approximately $200,000 for electrical and mechanical contractor costs, or in that case, subcontractors. Because the total claims from these 2 projects will not be any less than what was reviewed by the DABC on March 22nd, I decided to move forward with presenting the original recommendation for the board's approval today as originally intended. The new claims are currently being reviewed by staff and legal counsel. If they're found to be warranted, they will be vetted by the DABC for eventual submission for board approval. So tonight, I've asked Harriman and CHA staff to briefly walk the board through the action that's being taken tonight, as well as to help us answer any of the questions that you might have about the new claims or this process. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mark Lee, the principal architect on the project from Harriman, who's here, and many of our team are also here, although they are remote, but Mark is here in person, and we thank you, Mark, for joining us. And you should probably come up to the mic so that everybody can hear you, particularly on TV.
Excellent. This is certainly new virtual experience for me, a hybrid where I'm joining by Zoom, but in person with you folks. And so I will share.
And if you want to go off camera, people will see you because our camera will be on you. So, you know, and they'll just catch a different perspective, not from, you know, looking up. So
there we go. Excellent. Very good. Thank you, Superintendent, and thank you, members of the school board. What we're going to go through is the material that we shared with the DABC previously, as well as I think it's been included in your packet. And certainly, if there are questions as we go through the material, please, I'll look for. I guess I'll look for hands and perhaps certainly raise attention. And also make sure that we pause as we go through this to provide opportunity for input. So the first portion of the presentation that was given is actually dealing with the construction progress. And Superintendent Patana, is that still desired to review that material? I didn't think so.
Forward, yeah.
We're going to go through those. This is the real material that we wanted to cover. And as we discussed with the DABC at our last meeting, we had the delay claim costs. And the material that we're presenting, there's really two components to it. One is the delay claim, one is new work. And the delay claim are the costs associated with the delay in the schedule and the contractor's cost to continue the work given the change in the schedule. And the Longfellow School, the original claim was for $707,000, and through vetting both with Harriman and CHA and Portland Public Schools district staff, we've reviewed that, and the current final claim on the Longfellow delay claim cost is $462,523. The Reiki School is still being reviewed, and the initial claim for the delay portion of the cost was estimated to be between $900,000 and $1 million. That was revised at one point to $824,277. And then the more recent status is 820. So that is, like I said, that's still being reviewed and a work in progress. There is no final number for that yet. And the Presumpscot had an initial claim for the delays of 121,000 plus, it says plus 20%. That 20% was a general conditions amount, and we can get into a description of that if you'd like to. But and what was reported, as the superintendent alluded to, was what we believed to have been a final claim in the amount of $95,800. That was the information that we presented to the DABC. Subsequent to that information, we were informed by the general contractor that two subcontractors had come forward with additional costs associated with the delay itself, not with the added work that they were requested to do that arose after the construction documents had been bid on. But this is new work that is associated with the delay. The electrical contractor alerted Great Falls Construction that they had an additional $98,910 for those delay claim costs. The mechanical subcontractor had submitted also information that their delay costs would be in the order of $106,000. So those are preliminary numbers. We first learned of those last week, and those numbers are being vetted in the same way that we reviewed the numbers for the other two schools. And so those, while we had believed to have been given final numbers, we were informed that they were not final. So in addition to the delay costs for the contractors, there's also delays in the schedule that impact other costs in the in the project budgets that we work with, we have the we call them hard costs. Those are the construction costs that the contractor charges. All the other administrative costs for various things are fall under what we call the soft costs. And there's two that are impacted by the extension of the schedule. One is the project clerk, which is a person that's hired on to review progress and report and document that progress of the construction at all three schools. And so that person's effort and time is at a cost of $10,400 per month. The other one is the owner's representative, which is the company that's been hired, CHA. You've met them many times, but they've been hired to act on the owner's behalf through the construction projects, and the soft cost reported for the extension is $60,000. Those costs also are still being reviewed and vetted, so those are not final costs at this time. As I said, there are two components to the costs that have been provided to the owner as part of associated with the delay. One of them was those delay claim costs, which are really tied to the schedule. The second component is the new work that largely arose out of and through the permitting process with the City of Portland permit review. So that also has been a process of receiving information, asking contractors for additional information to substantiate what the costs are, reviewing that and vetting it. And the Longfellow Elementary School costs right now, the new work costs known to date, are $41,698. The Reiki is still being reviewed and vetted, and the most recent status update of that was about $299,028, and the Presumpscot Elementary School has a number of $193,971. That number is not impacted by the new information that we were given regarding the delay claim cost. So this number did not change with the new information we received since reporting this to the DABC. I'll pause for a moment. I said I would pause just to make sure that there aren't any questions.
Further questions from the board?
Yes, I do.
Ms. Bondo.
Thank you. Yeah, try to understand on the, if we can go to the Presumpscot additional delay claim cost. So if I really well understood is that those are the new work associated that were not identified before the original budget?
Correct. These are when the back when we originally budgeted the projects, we didn't include any cost for delays. We didn't anticipate that there were going to be delays.
Yeah.
And then so subsequent to the delays, the contractors have come forward and said, we have these costs that are associated with delays and us not being able to start when we anticipated starting. And so that's what the first part of all the delay claims has been working through. We thought we had finalized those as of for the Presumpscot School as of about a week ago. Mm-hmm. And then we're informed that no, there's an additional cost from subcontractors. And these are the two numbers right here that were from the subcontractor.
So that's those are really specific for the electrical and mechanical?
Correct.
Those are those two areas, then we need to, those are the new work associated and we're not budgetized.
That's right, Ms. Bondo. Those would be added to the slide that I'm showing right now. Those would be added to the $95,800 that is shown on this slide right here, if that makes sense.
Let me go to that page and see if it makes sense to me. Hold on a second. Delay claim costs. Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So that would bring that final claim amount. Again, this is still being vetted, and these are preliminary. But that instead of it being 95, it would be in the area of approximately 300,000.
Thank you, Ms. Bondo. Ms. Russell-Better.
Thank you, Chair.
Hi, Mark. Good to see you in
Good to
person.
see you as well, Laura.
I'm just following up on Ms. Bondo's question. The mechanical and electrical amounts, I think I understand that it's about the delay, but I'm just trying to understand, is what they're asking, is that for labor or is that for actual electrical, mechanical materials? Is it some of all of that?
Yeah, it is largely for labor.
Okay.
Because of the way that they were going to do the work. There's a large addition at Presumpscot, and then there's work at inside the existing school. Originally, the schedule showed that they were going to be able to complete the addition before doing the interior work. And because of the delay, that doesn't work out. And so there is some equipment cost, but the majority of that cost is really all about the labor cost and overtime in order to be able to get the work done within the constraints of the schedule.
Okay, thank you. That helps. So overtime to be able to get the project done. Okay,
Correct.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Ms. Billiou.
I guess following up on that, so the new costs or the extra costs are specifically to meet the deadlines?
Correct, exactly. So, and one of the things that we're proactively working at is how do we make the schedule work for as much as the school as for the contractor in order to potentially mitigate some of these costs. But we're still working through that right now.
Okay.
So these amounts, just to make sure that to answer what I think your question is, these numbers are not yet finalized.
Okay. And then I guess I had another question on the delays because they weren't necessarily projected. Have you guys talked about like more delays coming and like what that could look like?
Yeah, the good news is right now we are under construction. And so that delay in starting is no longer the case. We have newly established schedules. The contractors are working on that. So we don't anticipate, because again, construction has started and now we're moving forward. So the delay is past us.
The delays were due to delays by in the city completing the permits.
Oh, okay.
So
yeah,
it was the
yeah.
permitting process that slowed these projects down.
Okay.
And,
Okay.
and
That
there,
makes sense.
there's always the risk that there could potentially be other delays along the way. If, for example, we thought we were done with something and the permitting, the inspection said, no, that's not done. So there could always, potentially, but those would then be subsumed under our contingency costs.
Yeah. Okay. That makes
For the building.
Okay. So that was going to be my next question is like, if we have a plan for that and how to deal with that.
Sure. And we'll dig a little bit into where we are with that in the next slides here.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Mark, I had a question.
Yeah.
And good to see you.
Well,
And I will just start my engagement on this issue by saying that I get the privilege of walking by Reiki every day, whether it's picking up my daughter or running or just going to the grocery store. And the progress gets there. There's more. There's so much going on. Yesterday, I couldn't believe the number of trucks that were in front of the school. So it's exciting to see how much of the project at Reiki, I'll say firsthand because it's my community, is underway. I also know the stress that the building being under construction is having, in particular, on our staff. And we're about to be able to have students in some of the first classrooms, which is so exciting. But also, it's requiring teachers a whole bunch of classrooms to have to move around. So the delay is not just it has more than just a monetary impact, and it we had been looking with the money we still had to spend on the programs. We had been looking at options for further investing in the different projects, and instead we're having to pay for the delays. So it's good news and bad news, but I just want to appreciate the good news because it's great to see the progress underway. I guess my question is with respect to these these additional claims from the subcontractors at Presumpscot, what confidence do we have that we're not going to have additional subcontractors at any of the projects coming forward and saying that, and claiming that they have additional costs that we haven't yet accounted for?
Yeah, it's a good question, Emily. In terms of, we felt, that we had confidence the last time we reported that, and so we have been extremely upfront with the contractors as we now finalize these costs that it is absolutely to contain all of the subcontractor costs. And so in that regard, we have looked down through the various backup materials that they've provided to ensure that they have the subcontract costs included. And so the first time we hadn't looked, we took the information at face value from the contractor that it coordinated with their subcontractors. They included all that. We're no longer having any level of assumption. We are now being very upfront forward to say it must include every aspect of that from the subcontractors.
And, just looking at the cost of the delays at the three projects altogether, and I know this is still a back of the envelope number because we're still working with the general contractors on finalizing now the number at Presumpscot as well as the figure, the delay costs at Reiki. But just, I just added them up on my calculator here and it's $1.64 million. And that doesn't account for the new work, which will put us over $2.1 million. So we're getting to the point where the budget on this project and acknowledging that we're not doing some additional work, such as adding a second pre-K classroom at Reiki, which breaks my heart. But now we're getting to the point where the budget on these projects are going to be very tight. We're going to get into a conversation in a moment about that. And so just the possibility that we're going to face the general contractors coming forward with additional claims from their subs feels kind of impossible at this point. We can't bear anymore.
Understood.
Ms. Dio.
I was just curious if the $10,400 a month for the project clerk, is that just a 4-month position? Because if it was over 12, it's like $125,000.
So that figure is just for the 4-month extensions. That individual is actually employed right now during the construction. And so for the 30 or so months that we have them under contract, they are being paid. That was already accounted for in the project budgets at the beginning of the project. And now this is the extension that was not anticipated when we originally established what the project budget cost would be for that clerk.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, any other questions from the board? I don't see any. Please go ahead, Mark.
Okay, very good. So we talked about the delay costs and the new work. The schedule impacts known to date for the Longfellow. There's a 4-month extension. So that originally was anticipated to be done in August of 2023. It now will extend to December 2023, and then we will need 1 month in the warmer weather to be able to remove the portable foundations and do any landscape work that needs to be done. So that's the 1 month in the summer. The Reiki, likewise, was anticipated at the completion of the summer of 2023. That will extend to the December 2023 as well, 4-month extension. Presumpscot is anticipated as a 5-month delay right now, extending to January 2023. As you all remember, Presumpscot's a smaller construction duration, so it would finish up January 2023. And again, those are known to date. As I mentioned, that we're reviewing the schedule predominantly or primarily with Presumpscot with respect to if there's any way that the schedule can be in some ways used to mitigate some of the delay costs that for the labor for the subcontractors. Okay. So as Chair Figdor suggested, there's a significant amount of costs that were not anticipated in the original budgets for the 3 schools. And the question is, what ability does the project, the overall BFOF project, have to absorb those costs? So we start looking at that right now. There's approximately 400,000 remaining from the Lyseth project that was unspent, and then from the original amounts that we had budgeted for all 3 schools. Actually, and that this extends, to going back to when we established the new budgets after the classroom scenario 1 back in the the spring rather of 2020. There was a surplus left over of 581 from the projected cost for the 3 schools. So those 2 account for just under $1 million. The furnishings, fixtures, and equipment, we refer to it as the FFE, and so you can think of it as the furniture budget, but it also covers technology in the schools as well. But that FFE for the 3 remaining schools is approximately $2.2 million. It's important to note that at Lyseth, we went back to evaluate what we spent for the furniture line item, and it was approximately half, a little bit more than half of the amount that was allocated for furniture for that project. So there is the anticipation that we may be able to spend less than what has been budgeted for FFE on the remaining 3 schools. So those that's unencumbered funds at this time. The last item says the current amount remaining in construction contingency for the 3 BFOF projects. That 1.2 million is what we did was we set aside 5% of construction costs. That was part of our project budget at the beginning for unanticipated costs that come up during construction. And I believe there was a question, Ms. Biglio, I think maybe you had raised, what about any additional costs that might come up during construction? I think the superintendent suggested we have a contingency to cover some of those. That is the pot of money that we use to cover those costs that may come up during construction. And we do come up with unforeseen conditions and other aspects. So we are hesitant to touch that because we know we will encounter changes as we go through the construction projects. So right now, the consideration is that and again, this slide has information that was the last presented, so the numbers for Presumpscot are different now, but the Longfellow, total Longfellow delay claim and new work was 500,000 if you added up those two items that are related to the delay and starting the work. And the Presumpscot, we would have to add the approximate 200,000 if those numbers continue. But as I said, those are
for tonight, this is the amount that we're asking for approval of. So I think, we wanted you to have visibility into the additional costs coming down the road, but I wanted to just make sure that everybody understands that tonight, this is what we're asking for approval. This is what was reviewed by the DABC, and this is what's brought to you today.
Can you restate were you talking about the 200,000 or
the
million?
289,771 is the total amount that you're being asked to approve today for the Presumpscot project. We could potentially down the road be back for an additional up to 206,000, but that review process is still ongoing with Steve and Mark and the CHA team. Sorry to interrupt there, Mark.
Yeah, that's okay. I think there also may have been a suspension in the presentation. So, but hopefully everyone at home can still see.
Yeah, it's back
the
up.
presentation.
It's back up.
Great. No, thank you. Let me go. This is the slide we're on. So, the available funds, as we've discussed, is the $400,000 from the remaining of the LICEF, and the 581 from the surplus from the budgets from the BFOF and the 3 schools' projected costs. So the areas that we're looking at that have the amount remaining from the LICEF and the bid results funds would be 187. Again, that is no longer the case, but I think as the superintendent suggested, we're now what we're doing is looking just for the Longfellow work to be part of the recommendation moving forward until we establish what the final costs are for Presumpscot.
That's not the case. Today we're voting on the initial
the first cost for
Presumpscot as well as Longfellow.
So then that these values hold at 187,000 would be the remainder. We still have the 2.236 for the FFE, and the current amount remaining in construction is 1.238.
So can I just, to make sure that that's clear to the board, I think those amounts, which you can go to the next slide, I think that
Sure.
It just shows those amounts. That is what would be available for, any additional claims, including the existing Reiki claim that is still under review and the additional 200,000 that we saw earlier for Presumpscot. So that's the sort of the universe that we would envision coming back to fund from some combination of those pots.
So the path forward, and this shows the path forward for the Reiki, which is still under negotiation. The current projected delay claim and new work cost is about 1.1 million. That again is still being vetted, and we would use the remaining surplus from the LICEF and the bid results of 187,000 that carried forward from the previous page, the balance. And then we would look to reduce the FFE potentially for the project to cover the difference, but that will be, I think, future consideration. And so, as was discussed, the recommendation from the DABC was to use the bid remainder and the LICEF surplus or remaining balance to settle the delay claims for the Longfellow project, as well as the contractor, not the subcontractor's piece, but the first piece of the contractor's work. So I'll pause there if there are any other questions.
Can I just make a comment that I think is important, I think, for the public, and I think also for the board, and Steve pointed this out to me today, that I think it's important for people to understand that we delivered the LICEF project at, 453,000 below what was budgeted for that project. So I think, it's important to understand that we've been able to, sort of fully deliver on the projects with, with savings. And so, obviously we're now having to dip into those savings, but, if we hadn't done the work that these folks did to be able to deliver that project, we would be looking at, now having to access some of the resources from contingency or otherwise from the FF&E in order to be able to meet those demands. We will eventually need to do that because we still have outstanding obligations, but I do think it's important to sort of to point that out, because that's the work that these folks have done to get us there. So.
Thank you, Mr. Superintendent. Ms. Bondo.
Get a little confused. I just want to get my mind straight with those numbers here. When I look at the recommendation to the board, so what's the 212 are coming from? Because those are coming from the remainder of the LICEF. And I look at the LICEF remaining is 400. So just want to understand those
So there's $187,000 left in that pool of available funds after we pay this.
Okay, I see.
So you're approving today using all of that minus $187,000.
I see.
And Ms. Bando, it's very, it's complicated. So please ask what questions you have.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that I understand because I cannot vote for something and I just get confused. So I just want to make sure. So what we try to recommend today for the new cost on the Presumpscot to be offset with the remaining of the license, right?
Say it again, Ms. Bondo.
So I mean, what we want to recommend, what we're recommending today to vote on that, I mean, what we need for the new cost for Presumpscot work. So we need to get from the funding that we have, I mean, remaining from the license.
Ms. Bondo, you're not asking the board to do anything with the new, the unexpected $200,000 that was filed last week. That has not been reviewed by these folks. It has not been approved by the DABC. It will come to you at some point if there is something there. So right now, what you're being asked to approve are just the costs that are associated with the initial claim that was made against Presumpscot, which was for $290,000, and then the $500 and some $1,000 for Longfellow. With that, we're done with Longfellow. We still have $200,000 potentially that we will need to fund for Presumpscot and all of the Reiki claim, but that's the remainder of Presumpscot and the Reiki claim are for a future meeting.
You understand? So what the language was no more simple, so we know exactly because we are not all of us on the building committee. So to try to really get to absorb everything on one day, a couple of minutes. So I mean the language should be a little more clear. And then we know exactly what we need to approve for today, because I'm still get confused. What the exact amount are we need to be approving? The 289?
Yeah. Can I read that? Can I read that from my? Because I tried to make that explicit in my introduction. So, what we are asking for is. So there's a total of $793,992 that we're asking for.
Okay.
$504,221 of that is for Longfellow.
Okay.
And $289,771 is for Presumpscot.
Okay.
Okay. And what we're asking you to do is to approve spending $581,000 remaining in the bid allocation for the first three schools, for the three schools. So when we went out to bid, we had X number of dollars. When we finished contracting, we had $581,000 left.
Okay.
So you're going to use up all of that. And then out of the $453,000 that is available in the LICEF savings, you're going to use up $212,943, which leaves us with $187,057 in that sort of in that pool of funds. So I'm sorry, I think the memo could have been more explicit about that, but I think that we tried to capture that in the memo that is in the packet. So. I think those are great questions, and I just want to make sure that everybody understands that. So,
yes, indeed, you got clear on my mind. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bondo. Thank you for digging in more and asking your questions. I always appreciate that. Are there other board members with questions? And I see a hand up. Just have to figure out. Oh, it is Mr. Burks. Board Member Burke, please go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. This is very confusing, and I appreciate the translation that's happening now from those that have been looking at this for weeks to those of us that are taking a fresh look at it. It's also very frustrating, of course. I'm going to ask just to make sure I'm on pace with some understandings here. When I look at the path forward slide Reiki. Understanding that's not what we're trying to pass tonight. This is just looking forward, but since we're looking at everything tonight, but only passing the Longfellow and Presumpscot, I still need to clarify my understanding on this. With Reiki, we could have up to 1.19 or $1.1 million that we could see. And then the available funds is the sum of those three lines on this slide, the 187, the 2.2, and the 1.2. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, great. That helps. And then could someone please clarify for me what our owner rep is doing?
Sure, absolutely. The owner's representative assists the owner. Right now, the owner's responsibilities during the construction have been shared. Mr. Stilfen and Mr. Sherwood were available to assist on the license project, and we did have an owner's representative on the license project as well, and we work as a team. But the owner's representative helps to review the contractor's progress, the contractor's costs, and advocate for the owner's interest in reviewing all of those. And so when we say in the previous slides, we looked at the initial claim by the contractor and then the final claim by the contractor, a lot of the work that went into reviewing, vetting, questioning, and organizing all that information was done by the owner's representative. So that and there's representatives from CHA tonight, Jeff Berenbaum and Laura Jolly, that are from CHA that have been very much involved in that process.
Okay, thank you. And another question, understanding that the initial rates were included in contracts that are already set, but is the project clerk and the owner's rep, are those full like 1.0 FTE positions that are being compensated at that rate per month, 10K and 15K per month?
It's a little different. The clerk project is a position that is essentially a full-time position for that person to record and document the progress of the contractor, and we get daily reports from them that include both a written explanation of the contractor's work as well as photo documentation of the project. The extension of services for the owner's representative, I think, is established, and actually I'll let Jeff Berenbaum from CHA probably directly address.
Yeah, if I may, Jeff Berenbaum with CHA. CHA's engagement as owner rep is on basically a part-time basis based upon hours. So it's about 60% for all three schools in total. So that's what it extended out for the delay claim in that same respect.
Okay, thank you. And for the project clerk, they're dedicated only to the PPS projects with their time allocation, or are they serving on any other projects right now?
Just these projects.
Okay. Those are all the questions I have right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Board Member Burke. Are there other questions from the board? Okay, seeing none, we can end the presentation and move to public comment. Is there any public comment on this proposal? If anyone member of the public wants to comment, please use the raise your hand feature in Zoom to indicate it. Seeing none, I'm going to close public comment and move to board discussion. Is there board discussion?
Just have a comment.
Ms. Bondo.
Yes, just want to have a comment. Then we know that those are constructions, right? But the thing that we need to be aware that we value the programming, and we know really then those buildings going to be the 21st century space for our students. But we just need to see what we put in there. I think maybe bringing more assumption about, I know we cannot control the delays and we cannot control those excess, but just making sure with the contractors that exactly are we working? I mean, it's getting tight and tight for us to try to find those space of funding, because we really need to have a room where we really can find the programming in our school education instead of really spending the value to those construction, even though we know that it's going to pay, but it's really burning out. So I hope then we're not going to come back again and voting for some cost delay. Then we can try to minimize that one for the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bondo. Board Member Burke.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think this is much in line with what Member Bondo just said, that things are getting tighter and tighter. But the thing that's bothering me right now is that perpetually through this project, who's losing is our kids. That obviously people need to get paid, but the spaces that were promised to our families and our students keep getting whittled away. And it's harder and harder to stomach as I watch some of the last kind of you mentioned at Reiki, losing the opportunity to build out a pre-K space. That really hurts. Like, we're here constantly at night trying to make things as good as possible for children in the city. And just watching that get got by these really large costs previously by previous costs and other factors, it's just hard for me to stomach and swallow. So to those that are here as representatives of Portland Public Schools, I ask you to be as fierce as possible to protect what's remaining here in our budgets, and that make sure we don't lose any more of what we're trying to do for our kids, because that's who's losing as we keep scraping away on these budgets. Thank you.
Thank you, Board Member Burke. I don't see any other public comment, and I don't think I could have said it better myself. I'll just say that as a member of the Building Level Advisory Committee, and it's been extraordinarily frustrating to wait month after month to get the city to approve our permits, and then to get those permits, but go through this process where it's taking month after month to understand simply to understand the cost and the implications of the initial delays. So it has been a frustrating process. I agree with my colleagues, Ms. Bondo and Board Member Burke. And I'll just repeat what Board Member Burke said to encourage everyone involved in this process to be fierce advocates for our students as we complete these projects. So with that, we are going to move to a vote. By roll call vote, please indicate whether you support action to approve the District Advisory Building Committee's recommendation to reallocate project reserves to cost overruns for Presumpscot and Longfellow school renovations. Mr. Superintendent, will you please call the roll?
Yes, Madam Chair. Ms. Bondo.
Yes.
Mr. Burke.
Yes.
Ms. Russell Better.
Yes.
Ms. Biliou.
Yes.
Mr. Youssef.
Yes.
Ms. Ellis.
Yes.
Mr. McLaughlin.
Yes.
Ms. Santiago. Ms. Diu.
Abstain.
And Chair Figdor.
Yes. So the motion passes passes unanimously with the students voting with the majority. And I should mention that Ms. Santiago had to leave just as that presentation was started, and she apologized, but she had a school obligation. So now we're moving to consideration and action to recommend the FY23 school budget to the City Council. Is there a motion? Ms. Russell Better, seconded by Ms. Biliou. Mr. Superintendent, will you please speak to the motion?
Yes, Madam Chair. Tonight, as we do every year, the Portland Board of Public Education is being asked to approve a budget for the following fiscal year, in this case, fiscal year FY23. According to the Portland Charter, this budget must be approved by the school board and submitted to the city council for review and approval before being sent to Portland voters for their approval as required by state law. The school board approved budget is based on my recommended budget. As you'll recall, on March 15th, I presented a recommended FY23 budget of $132.9 million, and this represented a 5% increase over last year's budget and resulted in a projected tax increase of 4.1% for the city portion, for the school portion of the city tax rate. This recommended budget was reviewed by the Finance Committee on March 17th, 21st, and 24th. It was reviewed with the city's Finance Committee in a joint Finance Committee meeting on March 24th, and that's one of the two charter-required joint reviews by those bodies. At the March 24th meeting, the Finance Committee amended the proposed budget to add 2.3 additional FTE. That's 1.3 FTE social workers, a 1.0 assigned to Rowe Elementary, and 0.3 assigned to the island schools, Cliff and Peaks. Additionally, two half-time teachers, so a total of 1 FTE for teachers that work with students who are English language learners were also added at that time, 1 at Deering and 1 at Lyseth. Because the Finance Committee opted for using available fund balance reserves, while the budget increased by $153,000, this did not result in an increase in the projected tax rate. So that remains at 4.1% for the school portion of the tax rate. The Finance Committee's approved budget is what is before you tonight. You will recall that we had a presentation on it and a first reading and public hearing on it at our special meeting last week. After it is approved tonight, in whatever form that is, the budget will be revised to reflect any changes that you make tonight, if any, and then it's scheduled to be delivered to the Portland City Council on April 11th. It's expected that the council will refer it to its Finance Committee, and the Finance Committee is scheduled to meet on April 18th for a joint review with our Finance Committee. And then at this time, the City Council is expected to act on the final FY23 budget on May 16th coming up. Portland voters then will be expected to vote on the City Council's approved budget on June 14th. And so that summarizes where we are.
Thank you so much, Mr. Superintendent. Are there questions on the budget? Ms. Bondo.
Just wonder, the question can be related to any recommendation done, ask for it, or just because I have made a recommendation for an addition on the dual identifier FD. So I just I have a few questions if you.
Yes, now would be an appropriate time.
Okay, sure. Thank you. So I saw the request advance here on the March 24th for the 05 on the teacher license and during high school, right? So I just want to make sure then those addition then were proposed from the committee will be also serving the law plan, and if it's yes, so I can be satisfied for that and support the way it is.
It is.
Okay. And then the one they requested to the support student and language development, they request a dual identify language. That one is specifically for which grade? I mean, it's going to be from working with the coordinator, or it's going to be really specific for a specific grade?
So my understanding, and Malia is here, so she can help me to answer that. I believe that was to work with dual identified students in our district program. So that would be things like beach and bridge and things along those lines. Is that correct?
Correct. K through 12.
K through 12, but any special ed education, or just it's going to be random on the any specific area we're going to design to the FTs to be working with, or is really, what I'm saying is that I try to understand if that, even though you go to K to 12, is going to be any specific request to be on the special education or just on the language acquisition?
The position would be to work with students that are currently in the district programs, like Beach or Deering's FLS programs, who also are English language learners. So it would be an ELL teacher who would specialize as well in working with, student populations that are in those programs. And so they would work across schools and across grade levels with just the students who are ELL in those programs.
Okay.
And this is, you added a position last year, Maureen Fox, who I think has come and spoken with you, to focus on dually identified students. And so this was a recommendation coming out of some of that work, but I think it's not in the budget. And so the way we would cover it is through revisiting her time allocation, as well as looking at the ELL teachers in the buildings who are not necessarily serving those students and figuring it out that way.
So the way I understand is that her work, she can get some support from the language teachers in the building, right?
Yeah, I think that's the way we would manage it if we don't have the ad of the person who's doing that. I think, it's a specialized role. But, so, I guess I'm struggling because there's a reason why we asked for it, but I know it's not currently in the budget. And so we would have plans for how to, meet those needs.
Yeah. The reason why I'm really sticking on that and really my mind from, because it's really special.
Yeah.
It's so specialized. If she was the expert that we've been looking for last year when we invested the law plan, because we really need somebody who can work on making some protocol in place to be able to identify if the student need a language acquisition or the student is a special education, because it's been for years and we've been behind having those dual students being in that case. Yeah. So having her work, she needs some specialized language support on that same place. When she's making a protocol in place, is also implementation from the other side. Right. That's what I try to understand. Yeah. So what's the need? So I wonder if we don't build anything right now, is any way with what we have offset, like a ASF or something that we can do with the federal funding to try to have at least a 0.5 FTs to start working with her, because that's a special area. Mm-hmm. So I'm just curious.
And so I don't go ahead. Finish.
Go ahead. Yeah.
No, just, we did discuss during the budget process, during my presentation, during the finance committee, that, once this budget is on its way, that we will have a process to look at the possibility of using federal funds to support some of the things that are not in this budget. So I think that is, a direct answer to that question. I want to be, clear about, a couple things. And as Malia said, this position is not in the budget. The position that we're discussing is not one that is working on protocols and procedures and things like that, right?
Yeah. Oh,
this is for students that are, and it's not to prevent students from being referred. This is for students who are already in our, our most, the programs like Beach, the most restrictive programs within the district. It's working with the handful of students that are identified as dually identified in those programs. While it's not ideal, I do believe that we can leverage Ms. Fox's expertise, as she's helped us to put some of those protocols in place, to also begin to look at what are the needs within those programs and help us to identify what can we do within the context of those very restrictive programs, some with students with very little language of any kind, to really make sure that we're supporting them effectively and leverage the significant additions in in teachers who work with ELL students in our schools that we have made as part of the Allow plan. So I think it's important to remember that this is not like every year is not a new, we're starting from scratch. We put in significant resources over the last couple of years to bolster our faculty that works with students who are learning English. And so, we can draw on those resources to bring support into those classrooms in the way that we do with regular classrooms. So I think that that's why, as I had to make decisions about what to advance in the budget, this was not at the top of the list of the things that we put in. So that's, I just want to make sure that, I've gone through this. I want to make sure that everybody hears it again, that this is why I did not prioritize adding this position into our list of new additions.
All right, so we can continue. This is not my view. So, but I do respect your recommendation, but it's not the way I see. I've been see these the way to proceed. So, but I do respect. Thank you, Superintendent. So, my second question is about when we mention about any reduction, because I've been receiving a lot of emails asking about the garden tech. Are we reducing those positions or is not? We are not.
So no, those positions are not continuing. Those positions were funded out of ESSERF, and they're, again, they would be subject to, to the review process and the decision making around ESSERF for next year. And I just want to point out that the reason that those positions were added was because we wanted to increase the access to the outdoors and increase the availability of specials within our schools. And that was driven by COVID's demands as we were, trying to bring kids back into school. And so because those circumstances, we envisioned those being different for next year. That's why we did not continue. It's not that we don't think that it's valuable. We don't think that it's worthwhile. Right. I just think that, we have to revisit that because there's lots of worthwhile and good things that we can't afford to do. And so, I think that deserves its own vetting process as part of looking at our federal funds.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much. Makes sense to me. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Bondo. So we are still on questions, and I see Mr. Youssef has his hand up. Mr. Youssef, please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I do have a question following up about Mayor. So, as I mentioned our last meeting, I suggest that we might have more staffing in the Make It Happen program. And after that, I talked to our Executive Director of Communication, Grace Venezuela, and Tim, the director, and I learned more about the importance of the program and the age of 9 to 12, how important for our students to get help with the most important parts of choosing classes, getting ready for SAT, involving civic engagement, and finding jobs, and all of these are very important. And I was suggesting if the board agrees with me to have 2.5 FTEs for Deering and Portland, and those staff specifically will focus on kids who are less capacity and low performance, and that will help them to strengthen the program. And in the future, I don't think we are talking about investing and expanding the program in this year to the middle school, but I am suggesting that we think about expanding the program in the future to the middle school. But this year, I'm suggesting 2.5 FTEs for the Portland and Deering. And I think that's what I want to discuss with you guys. Thank you.
So, Mr. Youssef, would you like to, we could move forward in two directions. You could ask for a motion and someone would need to second your motion, or you could go ahead and ask some questions regarding regarding your proposal, and we could start with questions. And then if we get to a motion, you could at that point move forward a motion to add those positions to the budget. Does that make sense?
Oh, yes.
So I don't know if you had any questions or if you wanted feedback from the superintendent or any of the staff regarding the recommendation, and perhaps the board has questions for you. But I think if we get to the point of the board having questions, we should first move to a motion.
Can I just say that it would probably, I hear Mr. Youssef, and I do think that, that eventually will or could become a motion, but I think we're still in questions, and it would probably be better if we just dealt with any questions that board members have. And then when we get into the next phase, then it would be an appropriate time for Mr. Youssef to introduce any amendments to the budget and have those again go through question and discussion and so on. So I just, because what I'm concerned about is like there could be somebody who has a question about, something else in the budget, and that we should try to get those out of the way before we start moving to make amendments to the budget. I think, we've, obviously heard, Mr. Youssef's statement, and I think everybody is aware of that, and we will come back to it. It's not to deflect it, but I just would like to try to get questions done first.
Okay, Mr. Youssef, did you have any questions you wanted to ask regarding your proposal at this point? And then we'll see what other questions board members have on other aspects of the budget, and then we can come back to you with a specific motion.
No, I don't have any other questions now.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Youssef.
Thank you, Chair.
Are there other questions from the board? So just to reset, this is any questions on the FY23 budget? Okay. I'm just appreciating that we have had a thorough process and opportunity at every stage, starting with when the superintendent presented the budget to us 3 weeks ago, but through the committee process as well. So I just want to note that we've had such an opportunity that I think the board is now feeling very comfortable with this budget and very familiar with it. Okay, so I can move to public comment on the budget, and then we can go to Mr. Youssef's motion that will start a new question and comment period. So let's do that. Let's move to public comment. So this is, and then Mr. Youssef, just to be clear, we're going to come back to you. Okay. So this is public comment on, actually, I might want to not do that because
you should have public comment on the current budget.
I know, but if Mr. Youssef's amendment then changes the overall budget, do we want to have public comment on
I think you should have public comment on the budget that is currently in front of the board, and then you will have to have public comment on any amendments that Mr. Youssef
right, and then
cancels.
But I'm wanting if the budget is changed.
Yeah. Do whatever.
Okay. Well, I'm happy to offer public comment as many times as we can get in there. So I will move to public comment now. If there's any member of the public that would like to comment on the overall budget, anything with respect to the FY23 budget, please use the raise your hand feature in Zoom. You'll have 3 minutes to address the board. All right, I don't see any public comment. There will be additional opportunity. Sorry, I do see one hand, Michael Dixon. Michael, you can go ahead. Please start with your name and address, and then you have 3 minutes to address the board.
Thank you. I'm Michael Dixon. I'm on Monument Street in Portland. I'd like to speak to the subject of the exclusion of the garden educators from the current proposed budget. Understanding that there has been some discussion about its potential reconsideration later on in the process with federal funds, I still have listened in on some meetings here where it was explained that the inclusion of certain things in the proposed school budget was a sign of its importance to the schools and its durability. And I'm concerned that these positions seem to have been left out and not merited that esteem, at least not yet. And I hope they will be included. First and foremost, maybe because I think the very term garden educators is insufficient to describe everything that they do. And I'm here speaking on behalf of myself, but also on on behalf of the East End PTO. And I would just remind the school board that in the Portland Public Schools' own words from a March 16th media release, quote, "Our robust outdoor learning program has been cited as a model nationwide. Outdoor learning is important for all students and especially for the many PPS students that do not have equitable access to green spaces. Quote, school-based meaningful outdoor experiences can help diminish health inequities, increase socio-emotional learning benefits, and create new opportunities for learning in the natural environment. Outdoor learning will support environmental literacy practices, which are the building blocks and activities that help create sustained and meaningful relationships with the natural world. They aim to help students and teachers understand the interconnectedness of all systems of life through ecological, economic, and cultural contexts." And these statements were all made by Portland Public Schools in a public release, and they related to a grant award that was to build outdoor structures. Structures are great, but we need people to bring our children outdoors and facilitate these discussions. And we don't just need this in the height of a pandemic. We need it all the time, every year, every season, in every school. And it should be accorded that kind of importance in the school budget. One teacher at East End has said to our garden educator, "Thank you for coming into our classroom on a weekly basis. The rich discussions you are leading around climate change and our environmental impact is having a deep and lasting impact on my class. Your lessons are leading to connections within our science standards and more meaningful discussion and engagement amongst the other students. The short outings that we've been taking are a good way to incorporate hands-on field experience where my students can see for themselves the human impact on our planet. Keep up the good work and can't wait to see you next time." The East End PTO would like
Michael,
to commend
your time is up. Would you like another minute or two?
Yep. Just
Okay,
one
please.
would suffice.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. The East End PTO would like to thank our particular garden educator, and I know there are many across the district, and I'm sure the other schools feel the same. Anika Grayson, her time as the garden educator at East End Community School has taught our students sustainability, food science, ecology, math, human migration, and biology. She has made it her objective to teach students to live with the planet rather than simply on it. It is imperative that we keep the position of garden educator in order to continue in our school and in all the others, in order to continue, and I would suggest renaming it, but in order to continue the uncontested and sustained learning benefits that come with getting our children out of the classrooms and into nature. And as you've just heard, she also teaches these things in the classrooms. But most importantly, she gets them out into nature. As Nika put it best, in her own words, taking students outside and away from their computers, they are encouraged to reevaluate their relationship with nature, their peers, and themselves. All ages, all abilities, all socioeconomic backgrounds, everyone benefits from outdoor learning. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. We don't usually respond to public comment, but you're the only member of the public commenting tonight. So I'll just say on my own behalf that the fact that these positions aren't in the budget are not indicative of less support by myself or I believe other board members. They're currently funded with federal COVID funds. And as the superintendent alluded to earlier tonight, we will, after we conclude our FY23 budget process, we will engage a process around spending those funds. And I really appreciate your engagement tonight. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
All right. Is there any other public comment? I don't see any other hands. So I am going to close public comment and move to board discussion. So this would be the time to offer any amendments to the budget, and that would be in the form of a motion.
Emily.
Mr. Youssef.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Board. As I mentioned, I'm going to propose additional 2.5 FTEs to be added, Make It Happen program for Portland High School and Deering High School. Thank you.
So Mr. Youssef has made a motion to add an additional 2.5 FTEs to the Make It Happen program at Portland High School and Deering High School. So just I have one quick clarification and then I'll ask for a second. Mr. Youssef, you're saying 2.5 total additional FTEs.
I think he's saying
No,
2 half-time positions.
2 halves.
at each.
Yeah.
So, yes, half and half.
So it would be
I see.
one
So-
position shared across both buildings.
Correct.
So one additional position, a 0.5 FTE at Deering and a 0.5 FTE at
For
Portland High School.
Correct.
Okay, my apologies, I misunderstood.
No.
So that is Mr. Youssef's motion, and I believe that Ms. Russell Better is seconding the
Oh,
motion.
no, I had
No.
a clarify question about the
Yeah,
process,
let's get a
Chair.
motion.
Let's, the superintendent has encouraged me to get a second on the motion first. So is there a second for Mr. Youssef's motion? Ms. Billiou has seconded the motion. Thank you, Ms. Billiou. Okay, now we're gonna, so just to remind the board, we're going to go through our typical process now where we're going to take questions on the motion. Mr. Youssef, some of those questions are going to be addressed to you, and then the superintendent and staff can answer questions as appropriate. And then we'll go to public comment on the motion, and then board discussion, and then we'll vote on the motion, and then we'll get back to the main motion, which is the budget. So are there any questions on the process? Okay, so the conversation now is about Mr. Youssef's amendment. And Ms. Russell Better, you had a question.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Youssef, I just wanted to ask what the salary, what do you know what the cost of the
We can answer that. Kathy,
Okay.
Kathy, can you come up here, please? Maybe bring your computer because you are going to need to use the spreadsheet. Maybe, I don't know. I mean, we need to know how much what it's gonna cost, how it's gonna affect the tax rate, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, these are two, and maybe Barb, you need to help us on this too, because these are SEC positions. So I don't exactly know what those are valued at. So.
So maybe Kathy, do you want a minute? Because we could go to another question and come back to this.
Yeah, let Kathy do that. And
Okay.
if there are other questions, that's a good idea.
Let's go to Board Member Burke, and we'll come back to Ms. Russell Better's question about the cost.
Yeah.
Board Member Burke.
Thank you, Chair. Member Youssef, I understand I think the intent of the motion and the positions. I'm just curious to hear more about the vetting of kind of the gap or the need for the positions. I don't recall these being part of what was brought forth by the superintendent as potential investments that weren't then made. So it being new information tonight, just looking for as much information about what needs were found during your conversations with others and what, but just more on how you came to this position being the answer to those needs.
Can I go ahead, Chair?
Yes, please.
Yeah, thank you, Board Member Park. So As I mentioned, the program is very important, and students who are 9 to 12, and we have 3 site coordinators and volunteers, 3 to 12 per site. And my intention is that program like this important. This is our program. This is Portland Promise and our district program, which is very important for this youth to connect them to jobs and college preparation and help them, those who are less capacity and less performance. My intention is to strengthen the program and to have not only depend on volunteers, because this is a very important program, and we can invest the youth so they can do better for themselves and also be good role model for siblings and other parents who are looking up to them to help them strive the difficult life. So that's my intention, to strengthen the program, to help with the less capacity and low performance. The program is 100% volunteer, so not necessarily the middle students will always participate. So adding to this staff will help make more, not requirement, but strengthen the program and make sure that more students participate the program, and also support the site coordinator that we have right now.
Okay, thank you. I think I have 2 follow-up questions, if I may, Chair.
Yes, please go ahead.
The first is, I hear you saying that these might work with a particular population that I think, I'm wondering if that is in coordination with other efforts when we've looked at chronic T absenteeism, or the work and understanding that we're gaining with Latinx students. Do you intend these 2 halftime positions to kind of work in coordination with those other efforts and those particular students, or am I misunderstanding which communities of students you'd like these 2 halftime positions to be focused on?
The program actually specifically targets the multicultural students and target students. Almost half of the kids are target students. And we talked about restructuring the program a little bit so that more students can participate. Either we targeting those who are absent, or we targeting those who are falling behind.
Okay, yeah, so that's where I'm looking for clarity, because I understand the broad charge of make it happen and who you're identifying who it's for, but you're also saying the absenteeism or those that are falling behind. So that's where I'm just trying to get some clarity on if this brings a more particular focus to these 2 positions, or an increased focus to these positions. My last question, and perhaps we'll need to wait to hear what the cost is, but I was just curious if you were thinking this was something that you were proposing to be funded through the tax side or the use of fund balance.
I was thinking to use the use of fund balance, so that if possible, we can avoid any increase of the tax.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Board Member.
Thank you, Board Member Burke. Ms. Witchenbach, are you ready with the cost figures?
Yes. So if we propose using fund balance for this, we would be increasing it by $66,650 as an estimate. And that would be a use of unassigned fund balance increasing by that amount, so that we would be using $2,247,040 for fund balance. So the tax rate would remain the same. So we're increasing the use
But
of fund
that's
balance
assuming
by
that-
the same amount.
That's assuming that the board uses fund balance as opposed to, what would it be, on the tax rate if it were added in?
Board member Youssef just indicated he would want to use the fund
I'm
balance.
sorry, I missed that.
Yes.
Yes. Correct. Thank you.
Which
for
helped
correct.
greatly because I was trying to do both. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
I see a hand up, Ms. Bondo. Go ahead. It is Mr. Youssef that has his hand up.
Yeah, Ms. Yusuf, I think maybe now I'm going to the staff. So I know the value of the program making happen. So I just want to understand. I mean, right now what we have only one site coordinator who's coordinating both high school, Deering and Portland High School.
Is the question for me?
No, for the staff.
Oh, sure.
Sorry. We have 3 site coordinators, one for Casco Bay High School, one for Deering, and one for Portland High School. And Tim
Casco Bay is an
and
increase this.
Tim, and Casco Bay has 0.75, and in the budget currently, you have an additional 0.25 FTE to make that a full-time position.
Okay, so what Ms. Yusuf you are requesting is to add on the top of what we have already?
Correct.
Okay, so for how many students are we talking about? Average, roughly, the making happen? How many students are we serving from each side?
Total about 300, maybe 120 at Deering, 80 at Portland High School, and maybe 60. That's at Casco Bay High School. I just want to clarify because I think Mr. Board Member Burke asked the question in terms of who is this intended for. The program is intended for students who are or were former ELLs. So they are at the top level. They are at the top level of their proficiency. And what we are trying to do for them is so that they can easily transition to high-level courses so that then they can access those high-level courses that will help them get to 4 years of college. So that's the group that we're working with. So I also want to highlight that is the original intention of Make It Happen, and that we had the program starting at 7th grade when Miss Bilyuk was a student. And for me, what's missing right now is that transition piece from the middle school is what we are missing.
You just get the word from my mind. I feel like you've been reading my mind, Ms. Gray, because this is exactly what I was advocating, to bringing down to the what the way is supposed to start is the middle school, because that's a transition time where we can get all our students. So if Mr. Yusuf was brought to that recommendation to come to the middle school, where we can start, that's exactly why I can approve that motion, because this was the need, because those students are transitioning from middle school to high school. So the best place to really start happening and helping them is from the middle school. So that's what I want to know, and thank you for clarification.
Can I comment, Chair?
Yes, go ahead, Board Member Youssef.
Yes, in terms of the middle school, I think that's the most important part that both leaders I talked to mention, and that's when it starts the strengthening the students from that part. But talking to superintendent, that it needs process and preparation, and it's not going to be this year. And it needs more preparation and structure and a lot of work. The other thing I want to mention is that, and maybe I would double check with, I think the student that attending now is 280, each school, Portland and Deering, and 260 at Casco. If I'm getting right, that's the number I recorded.
Go ahead. Ms. Valenzuela, will you clarify the numbers of students who the program is serving?
Yeah,
at
it's
each
about
school?
at the height of the program. This year has really been an off year in many ways because not, of the transition, but we have about 300 kids.
In all three schools.
In all three schools, sorry. Yes, in all three schools.
And can you tell me a little bit about the history of we used to have Make It Happen in the middle schools, and then we had to reduce the staff. Can you tell me a little bit about that history? Because I'm not aware of it.
Yeah, the program started, but all grant funded. It was all grant funded. So we were staffing the site coordinator positions with AmeriCorps members. So that was the funding that we used to staff. And then a few years ago, we transitioned because it's really difficult to sustain the level of engagement plus transitioning staff every year. It was so difficult to find, when the economy was good, it was really difficult to find people. So it was not sustainable at all. And so we transitioned that to local funding for the high school.
So in the transition from grant funding to funding it through our local budget, we lost the high school program.
We lost the middle school.
I'm sorry. My apologies. We lost the middle school program, of course.
Yeah.
And when at its height, how many staff did we have at the high school level?
It's always been just one person at each site.
And if we were to go forward with Mr. Yusuf's proposal to add half FTE at each of the comprehensive high schools, how do you think that would affect the program and our ability to serve students?
I am not sure that it is going to. There is something to be said about breadth of the program and depth. So you are expanding this way to serve more kids, but then the quality suffers in some ways, even with additional staff. And Ms. Bell, you can speak. She was a Make It Happen student in terms of the focus that we were able to provide students in a smaller number. So there is something to be said about that.
I can comment if you want. So I started Make It Happen in 7th grade, and in the middle school part, it was mostly about, it was helping with school and helping with getting your homework done, but it really was also about making me comfortable with extracurricular activities and giving me opportunity to do any type of leadership programming or look for more opportunities outside of school. So that was mostly the middle school aspect. And then it was also to just have a really good relationship with my tutor, where they were also an opportunity for me to have, if I needed to go look for a laptop or something, that tutor was a resource to get me something that was outside of the school's premise. And then in high school, it was specifically about me obviously doing well and excelling in school, but also me using other in leadership programs like Seals Fit was a leadership program that I was able to go through Make It Happen. So Make It Happen approached me with that opportunity, and then I applied obviously and was able to get in. So that was a leadership program outside of school that I was able to have access to through the program. On top of that, they helped me with my college application, with setting me up with Let's Get Ready, which was a college, an SAT prep program. And they helped me get through that programming. And the site coordinator also became somebody, a resource outside of the regular school school structure. They were somebody I could talk to. I mean, I'm still really good friends with both of them till today. And it was more help and honestly more structure outside of the mainstream, the mainstream structure. And I think it's really helpful for kids like me in that state because, you know, you're essentially in your educational journey by yourself. And when you're not really aware about how to move and how to kind of move forward with your education, it was really helpful to have somebody have that one-on-one or like to have somebody be able to have that one-on-one relationship with, to ask questions, to like, I mean, even choosing USM over going to a school abroad, that was all my tutor. Like, I didn't want to stay in Maine. I didn't want to go to school here, but they obviously gave me more capacity to prioritize funding and prioritize like my environment and where I was in that state, knowing that like I didn't have the finances to go out of state and it was smarter for me to stay in state. So giving even those type of educational resources where they can help you make a really big decision was something that I also utilized through this program. So I think it's essentially something that can help some of the issues that we're obviously seeing, especially within ELL kids, because they do need that extra help that isn't just teachers or isn't just kind of the daily curriculum. And so that's why I think it's really important. And it's probably, for me, it's the best way to reach those specific kids. And I think Grace is speaking truth to the fact that quality is obviously going to get thinner and thinner the more kids there are. Like when I was there, I think there was about like maybe 20 kids at Deering. So we were obviously all able to have a tutor and we were all able to smoothly see our tutor whenever we wanted. But if we're talking about 100 kids, I don't even understand how one site coordinator can coordinate all those tutors. And then also the lack of tutoring now, I'm sure is offsetting a lot of that work.
So as you can see, we're not just an academic support program. We're doing a lot of other different things in terms of identity development, leadership development, civic engagement, and all of those things are needed to complete a profile for kids who will be really attractive for, to colleges. But, we're intentional, we're focused, we limit the number of kids we serve for a reason, so that then we can provide support totally for students. So that's
Miss Bando.
Right, thank you. All right. So can we attract some volunteers outside of our public school system, like, USM, SMCC? Because I used to be a coach.
Yes.
I used to be Making Happen coach.
Yes.
10 years, 15 years ago, 10 years ago?
10 years.
10 years ago. So I used to be one of the coach and lead
at the middle level.
In the middle level. So I've done it for about 2 years. So I know exactly how to volunteer from outside, and I look at the value that we're giving from the high school. So can we explore the approach, or using USM, all the partners that we have around education? Because I know some of our students are taking some college courses. So how can we involve some volunteer from those colleges to be?
We have student volunteers from USM at Make It Happen, because we have those volunteers.
All right. Thank you.
We have academic coaches from those different places. Yes.
Grace, I have an additional questions for you, if that's okay. I hear you saying that the program's serving more kids and that it's a challenge to do that, but there's a real need. So what would you diagnose as the next needs for the program in terms of staffing, if there was an opportunity to have more staffing for the program?
For the high school program or the middle school program?
Overall
program.
I think that for me, I will prioritize middle school. I really think that there's something lost in the transition to prepare those kids. And I'm hearing a lot from our middle school staff in terms of the need for the experience that Ms. Bellew had when she was at the middle school. This, for me, that's my priority.
And are there steps, Mr. Youssef alluded to steps underway to reestablish, to lay the groundwork to reestablish the middle school program? I'm wondering what those steps are and what the timeline is for them.
Javier, can I talk about that? The pilot. So we are piloting something right now to transition, piloting something at King. We're going to be starting after school vacation week to pilot and make it happen. Pilot with 20 kids, just to build a structure, lay the groundwork, feel the students in terms of what the needs are. So we're trying to, do that work at this time.
And how are we staffing that?
From one of my staff members who is doing some work, resource development right now. So that would be the person. And then we will have volunteers.
Thank you. Are there other questions from the board?
Adam has his hand up.
Thank you. Board Member Burke, I'm sorry, I didn't have the correct screen up. Please go ahead.
No problem. Thank you. First of all, I just want to clarify that, again, I understand Make It Happen is overall charter, if you will, and its importance and impact. So my questions are not trying to undo that understanding. I think it's well established how much impact this program has. What I'm trying to do is just come up to speed on the proposal on tonight. So I've heard that there's a missing transition from the middle school. These positions are targeted for the high school. This year's an off year in terms of how many kids are participating in Make It Happen. Do we have a projection for how many kids would be participating next year?
Our target will be 300 kids.
Okay, so it remains at 300. And then is there a formula that, we've done so much work on this budget based on formulas and ratios. Is there anything akin to that is at play here as we think about this program and its staffing?
It's so we have more kids at Deering High School because they have more language minority kids. Mm-hmm. So that's how it's it's proportional to the numbers of language minority students at each high school.
Got it. And so with that being the case, is this something that could be addressed through using the equity enhancement, given that specific need at Deering High School and the opportunity that we're trying to create through the equity enhancement approach? I think that might be to the superintendent more than anyone else, but.
Could be.
Okay. Thanks. So
and not just at Deering, it could, just to finish that thought, it could be used as the equity enhancement at Portland High School could also be used in this manner.
Yeah, and absolutely. Okay, thank you. That's all my questions for now.
Okay, I don't see any other questions from the board on Mr. Youssef's amendment. Oh, sorry. I have someone waving at me. Ms. Russell Better, I apologize.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry to interrupt you. I just wanted to clarify, Dr. Valenzuela, and I'm sorry if I missed this. Are the two positions at Deering and PHS, those are both
full-time?
Full-time. Okay. So, and then maybe this is to Mr. Youssef, just to clarify that your intent was to add a half-time. So, or is it, one half-time at each of these schools? But then I was imagining, I didn't quite understand if that was that's one position to be split. Was that your intention, Mr. Youssef?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. And then I think just a question for maybe the superintendent and Dr. Valenzuela to understand. That was helpful to know about the pilot program for the middle school, because I was going to maybe ask Mr. Youssef about his thoughts about this position being more middle school focused. But my understanding is, it sounds like right now that we wouldn't be in a position for that to begin now, since a pilot program is being rolled out. Would that be accurate? trying to create positions.
Piloting it this fiscal year.
So, but I was just following up with, I think the chair had asked you the question about how would you see this, an increase in positions for the Make It Happen program, where would you see be most beneficial? And I think I understood you to say that middle school level you thought was the most impactful, but I'm wondering if at this time those positions, because that middle school level has not been kind of developed, that program at this point, that it would be premature to be saying that these positions could be focused on that, since that's in the development phase to do this.
Well, that's why we're working on it at this time, just to make those transition moves.
Yeah. Eventually,
yes.
Okay, but I just wanted to say, Mr. Youssef, it sounds like what I'm hearing is that that's the level that the need our staff is saying. So I guess I'm just sitting with that.
And I just have to say also, when we started the program, we did not do all schools. Yeah. So we moved it one school at a time. We started at, Deering, at Lincoln and Lyman Moore. So we did not include, we couldn't afford to fund it that way. So we moved slowly. So in a sense of transitioning to middle school, we can also move slowly in that direction if we do not have resources. But, I'm just putting all these options out there for you to understand that growing a program takes time. And if you want good outcome as a result, as you know, we were awarded a Magna Award, National School Board Association. And that is a lot of work that is really intentional and planful.
Thank you. And I just wanted to comment that I really appreciated Mr. Burke's idea about the equity enhancement. I think that's a great idea. Thanks.
Thanks, Ms. Russell-Better. Okay, if I don't see any additional questions from the board, I'm going to move to public comment. So this is public comment on Mr. Youssef's proposal to add 1 FTE to the Make It Happen program, split between Deering High School and Portland High School. If any members of the public would like to comment on the amendment, please use the raise your hand feature in Zoom and you'll have 3 minutes to address the board. Okay, I don't see any public comment, so I'm going to close public comment and move to board discussion. Is there discussion on the amendment?
To open discussion. I mean, I've not weighed in on this.
Yes, I'm going to open the discussion with the superintendent. Please go ahead.
So I just want to, I understand the intent and value the intent and the commitment. I think that, as Dr. Valenzuela has mentioned, this program is an amazing program that we value and treasure. We've, invested in significantly over the years and are again investing in it this year. I think that it's important for people to remember that we started with, an amazing group of people that changed from year to year because they were, AmeriCorps, they were AmeriCorps members. And so they would stay for 1 year, sometimes 2 when we were lucky, and then they would move on. And we were able to, make those staff positions. And that's been a huge improvement in the quality of the program. And, Dr. Valenzuela is extremely thoughtful about her planning and development for this program. And, she's also overseeing the entire youth development effort that we started also in these last 5 years that includes our mentoring programs and includes our ELO positions. And so we're always looking at all of those resources and trying to figure out how to leverage them appropriately. It's extremely problematic from my perspective to do programming at the board level on the day that we're here to approve the budget. While I totally value and appreciate the intent in which this is brought forward, this is not how Make It Happen became a Magna award-winning program was not by people saying like, I'm going to add this, or I'm going to add that, or why don't we do this? And so please, and this is broadly, we spend a lot of time thinking about these things and committing resources in, a thoughtful and rational way. And I just ask that you please trust the experts that have developed these programs to do that. We understand the intent, we understand it, and absolutely will take that to heart, and we'll continue to move in this direction. But to do this at the 11th hour is really problematic for us.
Thank you, Mr. Superintendent. I will just make clear and remind the board that Mr. Youssef did state his intention to move forward with an amendment regarding additional staffing for the Make It Happen program early in the process, I believe during the first or second finance committee meeting. Your points taken notwithstanding, but just to make sure that that folks know that Mr. Youssef has been clear about his desire to see more staffing for this program as part of this process. Is there discussion? I see a hand up, Mr. Youssef.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to mention that I didn't mean to just drop something at the end of the process. I really value the work that get into the budget and the process that I'm every day learning from you, Superintendent, and from the board and from the expert that, and I never doubt about the intention of our team and the district and what we want to accomplish. What I was coming from is the complaint, the struggle, the cry that I see every day from the community, specifically multilingual and marginalized community. That this year, these 2 years were the hardest part of their struggle, and as I mentioned, my intention was to work with the expert and to advocate for starting the program from the middle school. But I did not see adding one position to the program as a technical. I'm not fully understand the way you guys, the district and the budget and the expert put this together. But I was thinking about this is the time we can help these kids to strengthen the program, to make sure that those who didn't attend can be there this year, can be helped, can graduate. Those 2 years were very hard for them. Some of them don't even know if they want to graduate. Some of them cannot graduate because they have to complete credits and other classes that they need to take. So that was my intention. I never at a minute minimize any effort that the team and you and the expert put this together. And I hope you take it that way. And my intention is really that, where I'm coming from. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Youssef. And I know from my own standpoint, and I believe on behalf of the board and superintendent, and also the superintendent, we know your intentions are very good, and appreciate your surfacing these concerns. Is there more board discussion? Ms. Bondo.
It's not. I try to understand the process where we are now. So can someone make a comment if the person going to support or not, and what's the reason?
Yes, so that's precisely the stage of the process we're at, which is board members stating how they're going to vote and providing an explanation on why they're going to vote that way. And then once that discussion wraps up, we will move to a vote on Mr. Youssef's amendment.
All right, thank you. Okay, so with due all the respect, Ms. Youssef, for the recommendation, because I really value the Make It Happen program. But while I won't be able to support that motion is because when I look at during the pandemic, the 39% absenteeism in our Latin population, including to the language minority students, stick in my head for years. And I was all the time looking for a reason, can we do better for that specific target of our students? And I think what I see in our investment this year, this is really what I see the beginning of some of the change, and I was looking for to try really to expand the Latin support to different aspects to our education. But I feel that we have already investing a lot of on the area for those two last year for some specific language minority students. And I think what I want to see happening more results and more assessment analyze from our investment, because we're using the taxpayers' money to make sure that everything we investing has a really impacting to the classroom, and how we building the learning target strategy for each student to move forward, so we can be accountable to our taxpayer money. So I do respect the recommendation. I really value what we are doing with the Making Happen. We see some of the result to the year. And then I think with the pilot from the middle school, that's what we like to see happening in a couple of years. And for that, I will pass, and I won't be able to vote for the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bondo.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Ms. Biliou.
Thank you. It would be directed towards board member Youssef and Grace.
So we're at the board discussion phase. So past the questions, we can go back to questions, but just
I guess it's more of like, it's just a question of if I were to agree, could I? Like, I wanted to ask.
Go for it. Go ahead.
Okay.
For sure. I definitely don't want to stop your question.
No, it's just more about like, so if I wanted this position to happen, but I also want that position to help resource the pilot and also be a part of that process. That's what, could that be something that we can combine under their role? Or that's the question that I was going to ask. Just essentially, like, if they're going to help the program, could they also help resource the pilot and help continue that? Because then we could then be also like strengthening the pilot and giving it more resources to continue. I don't know if that makes sense, or if there's a possibility.
I mean, that would do that. Do you want me to attempt to answer
Please.
that? Yeah.
I think it's
I think it would it would potentially be that we could vote this down, and then you could introduce a different amendment to the budget that would achieve that. Or you could offer, and this is where I'm not really good at this, but you could offer a friendly amendment, and if he accepts it, and whoever seconded, which I think was you, so you obviously would accept it, then you would, that could potentially be the way that, that you would.
As a part of the proposal.
I think Ms. Biliou's question was different. What I understood from it was, could the additional one FTE split between the two high schools also help support the pilot?
Yeah, but
that was not what Mr. Youssef proposed, and that's why I'm saying
that's what he's saying.
That would be the way to do that, is to amend the amendment to say that.
I'm just not sure we're in the, it's not the board's. Yes. Okay. We're getting into a level of managing staffing that I think is inappropriate. So Ms. Biliou, I think you're getting, so there's a couple of options like the superintendent suggested. So you and Mr. Youssef could talk now about whether he would entertain a friendly amendment to his amendment.
Yeah, that's, for me, that's like, that would draw a line for me to be like super supportive and more willing versus like not supportive and not. So I think it is important for me to get that clarification, I guess, for me to vote forward, is what I was saying.
So, Mr. Youssef, Ms. Billy is asking if you would entertain a friendly amendment, and Ms. Billy, maybe you can can be more specific as well, whether you wanted to move that position to the middle school level, or you want to have the high school positions also support the restart of the middle school program.
I mean, I'm not really, I guess it will be up to Yusuf if he wants to switch it to a middle school or a high school, but I would like the position to at least be resourced to help the pilot, because I think that's like one of the strongest part of this whole discussion that we've had, is that like we want more focus there, we want more resources, and if we can utilize half of this person's time for that, I think it would be better, or it would be more resourceful than having them be more present at both of the high schools. Is that something you would be interested in? Like maybe having them be a hand for like a helping hand for the 3 high schools, and then half of their time be focused specifically on helping pilot the King program?
I think so. I think I'm okay with that. And thank you, Ms. Pillow, for the thoughtful suggestion. Chair, I would be happy to friendly amend my amendment and go with that.
So, thank you, Mr. Youssef, and Ms. Biliou is the second. So, the friendly amendment can be considered incorporated. I guess I don't have total clarity on the specifics, but would it be to add an additional FTE to the Make It Happen program with the specifics determined based on the needs of the program, with an expectation that it will include supporting the reestablishment of a middle school program in some capacity?
Yes, I think that's the best way to say.
Okay.
Questions?
Thank you, Mr. Superintendent. So yes, now that the amendment has been amended, let's move to questions about the changed amendment. So just to be clear to everyone, we now have an amendment on the table to add 1 FTE to the Make It Happen program. Yes, Ms. Bondo.
So my question is, so the FT, the friendly amendment is, then we just brought on the floor, is to move the pilot. Then Dr. Vanessa just mentioned. So what's the role of the FDs then we want to add? What a specific role, and what kind of capacity that person is going to work to the implementation, or working to the protocol, or the
maybe
of the middle school, because there's already a pilot on the floor and they're working. So we just don't, because a pilot that really makes us bringing some need and assessment and look at what we need and move that one forward. So if we adding FTs right now, so what a specific person is going to do instead of helping you to build the pilot?
How would you use that FT?
Yes, actually.
May I answer?
I usually dream about those, and while I'm taking a shower. So this is an impromptu. So I don't have water on my, up here, so I can't really. I have to really think hard about this. I just have to say that anytime you divide people, even the halftime at Portland, halftime at Deering, is already difficult. And then now we are going to have a third school, which is King, for 1 person. I just want to put that out there, that is a challenge in terms of focus, concentration, having relationships with kids. So those are challenges that I see right from the get-go. Relationship with coaches, because it's not just the kids, it's also the coach, So I think that that's going to be a difficult situation for that person to do all of the above.
Yeah. So a follow-up question to Mr. Yusuf. What can we wait to have the pilot done from the middle school, because it's already in process? And then we can reevaluate that and see now the needs coming from that pilot, and then we can try to move those positions forward.
The question is for me?
Yes, please.
Thank you, Ms. Bondo. I think what Dr. Grace just mentioned answers your question. Everything is challenging. Everything. It's hard to do the process. It takes time. And what we are doing now is just what we are able to do, what we can do. We can afford now. We can start the process from here. So that's the answer. There is always a challenge. And I think the challenge that students have is more than the challenge that we have to put the plan in place.
Are there other questions? Board Member Burke.
Thank you. I think my question, and we'll see if it's duplicative, was first I just wanted to hear what Dr. Valenzuela thought of this amended amendment. And I purposely want to hear from Dr. Valenzuela first, and then secondly, want to hear from the superintendent what they think about this amended amendment.
I think, as I said, if we are going to do that, that specific amendment to add middle school to the role, it's going to be 3 schools being served by this person. So the challenge of building relationships with students, the challenge of building relationship with coaches, and the school staff at those 3 schools, the counseling department, there's a lot to, and the academic coaches, the volunteers. So there's a lot of 3 sets of those teams in each of the schools to work with. So even the 2 splits is a challenge. So that's my honest, thinking about this at my gut feel about this work.
Thank you, Dr.
And we've
Valenzuela.
had that before. I just want to say we've had that shared roles before, and it was not as smooth as we would want it to be.
Do you still want to hear my thoughts? I mean, I don't have.
If they're different than what you said before, that you don't have to repeat
I
yourself.
absolutely defer to Grace on this. I think, to the extent that this is a more flexible resource than, having to split the person, 4 ways. And Dr. Valenzuela has discretion on how to use that resource. It's better than if, we are locked in to this, that, and the other thing. Again, I still, in general, I'm concerned about this process overall for all the reasons that I talked about earlier. And I think that this just is bringing that into further, light, I think, for everyone at this, board to see that. But, having said that, if we were to do this in a way that it gives Dr. Valenzuela more discretion, I think that would be better than one that says, for all the reasons that she's very eloquently, raised, trying to split somebody in a position that is about building relationships and, and having the level of impact that we heard Ms. Billy talk about, and that I think we all know is true and make it happen. To do that, in 4 places is just not realistic.
Okay. Thank you both.
Sorry, I wanted to clarify. I think I was talking more about flexibility and not it being like a person that would be at 3 schools. I was talking more about a flexible resource that Grace can essentially leverage where she would need more help or where she would need more resources.
That's what I understood as well. As
Yeah.
one FTE with Dr. Valenzuela having the discretion to determine how to allocate that staff person. But Mr. Youssef, is that your understanding as well?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Is this more like what you dream of in the shower?
I will dream about it tomorrow morning.
Okay, I'm gonna go back to public comment, just given that the amendment has changed, and see if there is any public comment, and then we'll come back to final board discussion and a vote on the amended amendment from Mr. Youssef. So if there's any public comment on the amended amendment, please use the raise your hand feature in Zoom, and you'll have 3 minutes to address the board. Okay, I don't see any public comment, so I'm going to close public comment and move to board discussion. So this again is when board members would state how they're going to vote and provide a rationale, and then we'll go to the vote.
Wait, do we just go?
Miss Billy, you go ahead.
I would like to support this motion and the amendment, mostly because I personally have experienced the good things about this program. And I really just heard Grace talk about some of the needs that are needed, and just really how important that transition is and how important it is for us to start focusing on young ELL students and young students of color and getting them ready for high school and giving them an opportunity to be more empowered in their learning. So I really appreciated that discussion. And I think I do agree that that process was very awkward, and I don't think it's something that we should have gone through today, but I appreciate the opportunity to discuss that because I think it's something that is really important to me. So I am going to agree.
Support the amendment.
Support the motion.
Thank you, Ms. Bilio. Anyone else? Ms. Bondo.
I won't be able to support the motion because I feel like we already have a pilot on the floor. And when you're building a new plan, the pilot takes a time, then you have to recognize what the needs and to assess the result and put people in place. So I think I will be supporting as soon they're done with the pilot and they can bring the result back to the board with more concrete action on the table. That's the time I can support it. So I won't be able to vote for that.
Thank you, Ms. Bondo. Board Member Burke.
Yeah, thank you. This is difficult because on the one hand, and many times in this process, of course, I want to provide more resources to the district, particularly for instances like this. And as we've heard from other staff, it's hard for staff to say that they don't want resources when we're saying we'd like to give them to you. But I'm not hearing that this is incongruent, not only with the process for how such staffing should be determined, but also with the process by which Make It Happen has come to be the program that it is. I just heard Dr. Valenzuela say she'll think about it tomorrow, and I'd rather defer to when Grace and Dr. Valenzuela, excuse me, is ready to say this is clearly what I need, even if we're trying to deliver a flexible position here. And I think the SRF could be the next available time, so it wouldn't have to be a wait until next year to put it in the annual budget. But I'd be very open to looking at that within the SRF funds. Also hearing from Member Youssef that part of his intention to bring this forward now is to meet the immediate impacts that the pandemic has caused upon the students that this program serves. So I'm just not hearing that it's intentional and planful in the way that Make It Happen is overall. I think it's an awkward process to make this decision, and thus I will not be voting in favor of the amendment, but I'm definitely here to support further recesses for this program when they're brought forward by Dr. Valenzuela and the superintendent. Thank you.
Thank you, Board Member Burke. Ms. Russell-Better.
Thank you, Chair. I've just been deciding as I'm sitting here thinking, so this is a tough one for me too. I think I want to appreciate Mr. Youssef bringing this up and the conversation that's brought up. I think I'm not able to support it tonight because I do have some concerns about the process and wanting to follow our process in a clear way. And so I think some of that I heard the superintendent's concerns, and I do want to take those seriously. But I do also think this conversation's been fruitful, and I would be open to also discussing the possible use of ESSER funds, and also think this was really fruitful in thinking about the pilot program and future opportunities for expansion at the middle school level. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Russell-Better. Seeing no other comments from the board, I also will not be supporting this amendment tonight. I do really appreciate Mr. Youssef raising to the board how critical the Make It Happen program is and how tightly resourced it is. We know that it just won the Magna Award at the School Board Association, and there's reason for that. And I think we heard it firsthand in Ms. Bilyeu's description of how it impacted her both middle school and high school trajectory. And so I appreciate that Mr. Youssef has brought this program to our attention in the budget process in a way that we otherwise want to focus on it. And I just want to note for Mr. Youssef in particular that when Board Member Burke raised the possibility of using ESSER funding to support the pilot program at King, Dr. Valenzuela did shake her head yes. And I'm sorry to if you didn't want to be that to be pointed out, but it does seem that the timing might work as we get a pilot underway and see what the initial need for is at King, to then have more information to consider using ESSER funding to restart the Make It Happen program at the middle school level, specifically at King. And I do think we all understand that we would like to see the Make It Happen program at the middle school level again, but just recognizing that this didn't come to us as a staff request and nor did it move through the process as a priority need highlighted by the superintendent and his team. And I do appreciate that we are balancing many, many, many needs, and the need for more resources is keenly felt throughout throughout all of our buildings in a myriad of ways. So I want to appreciate Mr. Youssef for bringing this amendment. I also want to just appreciate Ms. Bilyeu for working to amend the amendment to, I think, meet the need that we are hearing from Dr. Valenzuela. And I appreciate, I look forward to continuing this conversation as we move into the ESSER process. the process for allocating the additional ESSER funding that we have remaining. So with that, by roll call vote, please indicate whether you support Mr. Youssef's amendment as amended. And so just to restate it, it is adding 1 FTE to the Make It Happen program to be used at the staff's discretion. Mr. Superintendent, will you please call the roll?
Yes, Madam Chair. Ms. Bondo?
No.
Mr. Burke?
No.
Ms. Russell Better?
No.
Ms. Biliou?
Yes.
Mr. Youssef?
Yes.
Ms. Ellis?
No.
Mr. McLaughlin?
No.
Ms. Diu?
Yes.
And Chair Figdor?
No. So the amendment fails on a 2-4 vote, with the student board members split, with 2 student board members voting against the amendment and 1 voting for it. And Mr. Youssef, thank you for your effort. Okay, so now we are going, and Mr. Youssef, I see your hand up. Would you like to speak?
Yes, I just want to say thank you, Chair. Thank you, Board. I just want to say that I'm disappointed that the vote went this way. It is important that we work together to address that issue. It's not just the pandemic. It is something that youth need. They need direction. They need support, urgent support, because of what they went through past 2 years. So I don't think us depending on what is going to happen in middle school is not a solution. I believe that we cannot wait. When we have the resources, we cannot wait something happen in the middle school. That's a long-term investment. Yes, it takes time. Yes, these programs doesn't come at night. It takes time. But I never expect that superintendent just tell me that I have to change the budget tonight, because that's not the way I was intended. And I never had that intention to just, I put a lot of thought in this issue. Yes, I do not have all the information, but I do have what I can get and gather. And I would like to thank you and appreciate it.
And Mr. Youssef, maybe I can thank you for that, and maybe I can take some responsibility for, I would have liked to have worked with you, and I think I should have worked with you earlier in the process to recognize the issue you were bringing to us, and seeing if earlier in the process we could have brought it forward. So I apologize for that, and I wish I had engaged with you earlier. So I just want to say that, and I'll take it to heart as we move forward in our deliberations on other issues.
Thank you.
Okay, so
I eventually want to say what I wanted to say. So I'm just not sure when to do it.
Okay, so Ms. Dio, I'm going to call on you in a moment. So we are now back on the main motion, which is the FY23 budget. And so just a reminder of where we're at in the process is we're at board discussion. So this is a point where we discuss our positions on the budget. So Ms. Dio, please go ahead.
Okay, I just wanted to say that I'm new to the budgeting process, and I've wanted to mention this for a while, including in the finance committee, but I wasn't sure how or when to speak on it. And I just wanted to say that in the board presentation to the school board, I wanted to show my support for the additional 0.4 FTE that was for the Chapter 104 position. And this may be 11th hour, but for students especially who have no idea when to speak up, that I just personally think that, I'm not going to say it. I just think that there should, I don't know, have been, I wish there was more chance or opportunity or engagement, because I feel like a jerk bringing it up, especially after the 11th hour comment. So I just wanted to eventually put, my 2 cents in. I know that the budget is done. I should have spoken up earlier, but I just think it's important that all students, it is crucial that all students get an outstanding education. And I think it's important for Chapter 104 students to be challenged. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Ms. Dew. And I'll just, reiterate to the board that the work on the budget happens across the whole course of the year. So as soon as we pass this budget and move it through the council process and then to the voters and it's finally approved, essentially, we can turn to thinking about the FY24 budget. So there's no time that's too early to raise issues, and certainly when we're in work sessions on the budget, or I should just say that the earlier the better. But it is a continual process.
And let me just add that I hear you and take that as constructive criticism about our engagement of the student board members in the budget process. And I think that, for us to be more thoughtful, because it is a more awkward situation, because you can't formally introduce a motion that you would need to have a sponsor from among the elected officials to do that. So I think that, for us to take that to heart and try to figure out how to make sure that, you and future student board members are able to raise those concerns earlier in the process, and perhaps with your assigned mentor or something along those lines to have an opportunity to bring those things forward. I hear you, and clearly there's work that we need to do in that area.
Okay. Thank you again, Ms. Dio. Is there other board discussion on the budget? Board Member Burke.
Yeah, it's easy for me to support the budget as it stands. I think it is a pragmatic budget that keeps our investments that we've made in the last few years and adds to them very strategically. I look forward to the deepening of the work that was started this year through some of these investments and the perpetuation of these positions. And whether it be a position like we were just discussing for Make It Happen, or the garden educators, there's things that I haven't brought forward or supported here within this budget, but that I will absolutely be an advocate for when it comes to looking at ESSER fundings. And I'll just say on the garden educators in particular, it's clearly documented, as was repeated back to us from our own press releases, that connection with nature and time outdoors is absolutely an equity issue, and it has benefits to learning, to health, and otherwise. And I am also hearing some things between the lines that says that our support might wane whether we're in a pandemic context or not for outdoor learning, but that's not true for me. And so I look forward to those conversations, building understanding about what our students need and what benefits them in a holistic sense as well as an academic sense. And we'll stop there, leave those conversations for the ESSER conversation, and look forward to see what comes of our conversation tonight as well about Make It Happen. I think that was useful to push forward into that space and what more we could do there if the board's giving a signal that we want to make an investment there. And appreciate everybody's good work and I appreciate the awkwardness of tonight. And to Member DU, I apologize as the finance chair for not doing more to speak with you about the process there and make clear opportunities for when you can contribute. I take responsibility for that within the committee that I am chairing. Definitely heard tonight. So thank you everybody for your good work. Thanks for the constructive aspects of the process all the way through tonight.
Thank you, Board Member Burke. Are there any other members that would like to speak on the budget before we move to a vote? Okay. I will say that I also am proud to support this budget tonight. I think that it's a budget that more deeply moves forward our equity work. It is, the context of facing historic inflation. This budget, our rollover budget initially was an 11 to 12% increase in the tax rate. And what we're voting on today is a 4.1% increase. So I think in chilled tonight, this budget, and overall, I mean, what we were talking about in the course of our finance committee deliberations and tonight, we're adding, adding a total of about 3.5 staff positions to what the superintendent had initially proposed. And I do think that that's a testament to the fact that this budget meets the moment. It continues our equity work while also recognizing the economic reality that we're facing right now with inflation at historic levels. So I want to thank the superintendent. I want to thank our finance director and the entire staff, because I know that there is work in so many different capacities that comes together in this budget. I think that this process has been very straightforward throughout the last 3 weeks, because this budget really does meet the moment. So with that, by roll call vote, please indicate whether you support action to recommend the FY23 school budget to the City Council. Mr. Superintendent, will you please call the roll?
Yes, Madam Chair. Ms. Bondo?
Yes.
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Ms. Russell Better?
Yes.
Ms. Biliu?
Yes.
Mr. Youssef?
Yes.
Ms. Ellis?
Yes.
Mr. McLaughlin?
Yes.
Ms. Diu?
Yes.
And Chair Figdor.
Yes. So the budget is unanimously passed with the students voting with the majority. Congratulations all around. And I will just recognize again the kind of awkwardness of the process tonight. And I think I will take away some lessons from it in terms of engaging board members and including student board members earlier in the process. So thank you to everyone for bearing with us. I want to celebrate this budget, even if tonight was a little bit difficult. So with that, we are moving to personnel, and we have one item, which is sabbatical leave. Is there a motion? Ms. Russell Better, seconded by Ms. Biliu. Mr. Superintendent, do you want to speak to this motion, or is?
No, I am. Yeah.
Okay. Mr. Superintendent.
Tonight, we're asking you to approve the proposed request for a full year sabbatical submitted by Lincoln Middle School educator Robin Leah, to engage in a year of study around equitable STEM education. Article 26 of the Portland Education Association contract provides a sabbatical benefit to educators who have completed at least 7 consecutive years of full-time service to PPS Sabbaticals may be granted for purposes of study or travel related to the educator's teaching field or to complete other work of value to the district. The collective bargaining agreement includes a timeline for submission and approval beginning in December and concluding in April of each school year for requests submitted for the following school year. Submissions are reviewed and scored against the contract's sabbatical rubric by a panel of academic team members and must meet a contractual minimum score to be recommended to the board for approval. When sabbaticals are granted, as we're recommending in this instance, the district provides 50% of the educator's salary for a full year leave and 75% of an educator's salary for a half year leave. Educators who are granted sabbatical leave must return to PPS for at least 2 years, 1 year for a half-time sabbatical, and by contract, sabbaticals are limited to no more than 2% of the teachers in the district. In your packet, you also have a link to Ms. Leah's application, and she is here to answer any questions that you may have. So that's it.
Thank you, Mr. Superintendent. Are there questions on the motion? Board Member Burke, please go ahead.
Yeah, first to clarify, since this is the first sabbatical review I've done, is there particular questions that are or are not allowed? Or particularly not allowed? Let's get real specific there, Adam. Yeah.
Try us, and if you get zapped, you'll know that it was one that you weren't allowed to ask. Just kidding.
Yeah, okay. I'll wait for something like that to happen. So I just have a question. The spirit of the sabbatical, of course, is in line with what we would want to approve a sabbatical for. I'm particularly curious to hear more about the difference between the intention and current list of partners. When I see that in the first semester, there would be engaging in an equity series and staff, as well as BIPOC, anti-racist, equity-focused education organizations to identify resources relevant to PPS. But as far to my knowledge, I only see white-led and predominantly white-centered organizations listed as partners and resources at this time. So I'm just curious if you could say more to whom else you might be looking for that's outside of those institutions.
And I don't know if Robin is here to address that, but I also know Malia and her team reviewed the application. So I'm sure that they took that into consideration when they reviewed. So I don't know if you want to speak to that, Malia, and take the heat off of.
But Jesse Robinson, our Director of Curriculum Instruction, is here, and Robin's here as well.
Okay. So maybe one of them can address
Robin
that.
or Jesse. Okay, go ahead. Robin would like to speak to it. Go ahead.
I can kind of hear Malia. I can speak to that. Okay.
Yes, please go ahead.
So I'm Robin Lee. The list, I should have an updated version of that. So the list of organizations should include a lot of BIPOC and not white organizations as well. So there's the Multicultural Science Curriculum Association, the NSTA Equity Panel is the national level, and then UMO's RISE Center is all through the UMO staff there, and they connect with the Wabanaki Studies Program and a few other stakeholders there. And then there's also Science in the City, which is through Stanford University, and they've been pushing out curriculum and resources to be used nationally.
Oh, okay. Thank you for the clarification. I'm sorry if I'm looking at the wrong version, but those weren't listed on the version I'm looking at. So thanks.
I think that they're embedded down in the narrative further.
Got it. Thanks.
Board Member Burke, did you have additional questions?
I do not. Thank you.
Okay. Are there other questions from the board? Seeing none, we don't have public comment on personnel issues. So we're going to move just right into board discussion. Is there any board discussion? Okay.
I'm talkative tonight. I got a comment.
Go ahead, Board Member Burke.
Sorry, I'm happy to support this. Robin and everybody's put effort into putting this together. I really appreciate it. I'd be excited to see what you can bring back to the district based on this work. My third grader today was exuberant to hear that the science curriculum is kind of coming into play finally. You know, the kind of interim of the salmon started things off, but now there's something more coming, and it's been one of his primary requests throughout his elementary education is when does science start, and to know that that's not something that just a white middle class kid should have access to or should be centered in that exploration. I'm excited for what you'll will help us do as a district. So happy to support this. Thanks for everything that's gone into it to date.
Thank you, Board Member Burke. Okay, Board Member Bondo.
Yes, yeah, I just want to say I'm proud I am to see that we're moving to really 21st century research here in science, and I've been all the time advocating. So hopefully we can move that one to other majors, you know, having more teachers to move to that direction of research and bringing more new perspective and substance to our curriculum. Yeah, thank you and good luck.
Thank you, Board Member Bondo. Is there any other comment by the board? Seeing none, I'm going to close board discussion by roll call vote. Please indicate whether you support approving the sabbatical leave. Mr. Superintendent, will you please call the roll?
Yes, Madam Chair. Ms. Bondo?
Yes.
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Ms. Russell Better?
Yes.
Ms. Biliu?
Yes.
Mr. Youssef?
Yes.
Ms. Ellis?
Yes.
Mr. McLaughlin?
Yes.
Ms. Diu?
Yes.
And Chair Figdor.
Yes. So the sabbatical leave is unanimously approved with the students voting with the majority. Congratulations, Robin. Okay, that is it for our meeting tonight. So our next meeting I want to highlight is next Tuesday, the 12th. It's a week earlier than is typical. Rather than being the first and third Tuesdays, we're meeting the first and second Tuesdays of the month because the following week is school vacation. So we will see you here and on Zoom at 6 p.m. on April 12th. And with that, is there a motion to adjourn? Ms. Russell Better, seconded by Ms. Bondo. All in favor, just with a show of hands. It's unanimous and we are adjourned at 9:29 p.m.